Chapter 636. In the middle of the banquet, Prawalton was wearing a black lace evening dress. She was standing proudly in the middle of the venue, holding a glass of martini in her hand, but her eyes were not focused. Looking at her, many young talents who wanted to come up and say hello couldn't help but stop. In this circle, who doesn't know that Prawalton has a strange temper? Prawalton, congratulations. But sometimes there will be some exceptions. For example, at this time, a middle-aged man with brown hair, came over with a smile on his face, and looked at Prawalton, and said with a smile, "Uncle Jim?" Looking at the man who came over, Prawalton frowned and said with disgust, "Haha, your expression is not a very friendly expression. I have heard about your matter. After today, you will be Dong Mingluan's person. I have to admit that your family's move is really beautiful. But do you think you can keep Sam's club like this?" Looking at Prawalton's face, Jim Walton chuckled, then walked to her and whispered softly. Hearing his words, Prawalton's face became more ugly. "This is our family's matter. I think Uncle Jim has no need and power to intervene." Looking at Jim Walton, Prawalton took a deep breath and said with a serious face. Hearing Prawalton's words, Jim Walton just smiled with a trace of disdain. How can he let go of what he wants so easily? "Prawalton, you are here." But just as he was about to fight back, a voice suddenly came from behind him. Then he looked back and found a tall yellow man standing behind him. Looking at the smile on his face, it was not difficult to see that this guy should know Prawalton, but he had no impression of this person. Looking at Prawalton, he found that she was completely stunned at this time. Her face was full of disbelief. "Hello, young man, are you Prawalton's friend?" Looking at the shock on Prawalton's face, it means that Prawalton knows who he is, but she didn't think that he would come, and he can't sneak in like this, so he may be someone who knows Prawalton. Jim Walton is on the Forbes list this year, 10th in the world. Of course, he is not a fool. With a turn of his eyes, he probably knew the identity of Jiang Hai, so he smiled and said to Jiang Hai, "Yes, I am Prawalton's friend and you are." Hearing the middle-aged man's words, Jiang Hai also looked at him. "Of course. I am Prawalton's Jim." Looking at Jiang Hai, the middle-aged man took the initiative to stretch out his hand. After Jiang Hai heard his words, he was also stunned. This is Jim Walton, the world's 10th richest businessman, with a total asset of more than $30 billion? He looks like an ordinary little old man. But as the saying goes, a slap does not hit a smiling face. Although he knows that this little old man is the ultimate villain, he still stretched out his hand and shook his hand. "Then you young people talk, I will go see the others first." Seeing that Jiang Hai's hand had left his, Jim Walton smiled and left the place, walking into the distance. After Jim left, Prawalton stepped forward in an instant and took Jiang Hai's hand. She was a little excited at this time. "Why are you here?" Looking at Jiang Hai, Prawalton took a deep breath, suppressed the thoughts in her heart, and then asked Jiang Hai in a low voice. Before this, she had been very conflicted. When she thought of marrying someone else, especially a man, she felt as disgusted as a dead mouse. Today she was ready. Even if she had to hand over the rights of Sam's club, she would never marry Dong Mingluan. But at this time, Jiang Hai unexpectedly appeared. This made this woman, who was originally very nervous, suddenly have a trace of backbone. But then she thought about it. With Jiang Hai's strength, how could he move these people? But with Jiang Hai by her side, it was much better than fighting alone. Seeing the look in her eyes, Jiang Hai smiled and stretched out his hand, gently touched her head, and then pulled her into his arms. Prawalton felt Jiang Hai's action at first. At first she was stunned. Then she calmed down and quietly leaned on Jiang Hai's shoulder. Her hands also stretched out. Just like that, she wrapped them around Jiang Hai's waist. However, what he didn't know was that this scene had caused everyone's eyeglasses to shatter. Almost everyone's eyes and the corners of their eyes looked at Jiang Hai and Prawalton, with a trace of shock on their faces. Who is Prawalton? The little princess of the Walton family, usually showed the coldest face to people. In the face of the pursuit of excellent men, she was disdainful. But what the hell is going on today? Maybe it's really a ghost. Would she also lean on a man's body like a little bird? No matter whether others believed it or not, they wouldn't believe it anyway. But at this time, this scene was in front of them, and they couldn't not believe it. Now they felt that their hearts, livers, glasses, and internal organs were almost broken. At the same time, some people who were still jealous of Dong Mingluan's possibility of winning the beauty's heart were secretly happy at this time. They seemed to see a green forest growing on Dong Mingluan's head. Don't worry, I will solve your problem. But at this time, Jiang Hai and Prawalton, who were hugging each other, didn't know what the people were thinking. Lifting Prawalton's face, Jiang Hai gently kissed her cheek and said in her ear. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Prawalton nodded seriously. Americans were better at expressing their thoughts. Now even if Jiang Hai kissed her lips, she might not be shy, let alone just kissing her face. But with Jiang Hai's support, she was more confident that she could compete with the Walton family. What are you doing? Let go. At this time suddenly a voice shouted. As the voice came, Jiang Hai and Prawalton also looked in the distance, only to see that behind the crowd, two people were slowly walking over. The middle-aged man walking in front looked to be in his 30s or 40s. He was a white fat man, and at this time, his face was full of anger. Behind the fat man, there was a white old man with a sense of indecency. His white hair was combed disrespectfully, and he wore a pair of brown glasses on his face. When he saw Jiang Hai and Prawalton, he was surprised, but he didn't care and slowly walked over. Seeing the two people coming over, the people who were watching the fun made a circle. Some people envied Jiang Hai for being able to break the thorny rose, but they were secretly amused. They knew that this time, there was a good show to watch, and the most likely thing was that Jiang Hai was finished. You bastard, who are you? What are you doing here? Where is the security? How can you let such a person in? After walking in front of Jiang Hai, the man shouted loudly, as if he had gone crazy. For him, Jiang Hai was slapping his face today. Today was the Walton family's gathering, and also the day when he might marry Prawalton. Why did this guy, Jiang Hai, suddenly appear, hugging his fiancée in front of him? F***ck, this villain's sense of déjà vu is too strong. Me? Of course, I was invited by you. My name is Jiang Hai, the owner of the Soaring Dragon Manor, but who are you? Hearing the fat man's words, the security guard hesitated for a moment, but still walked over. Although today was the Walton family's gathering, and Dong Mingluan had no right to ask the security guard to drive people away. After all, he would soon be the son-in-law of the Walton family, and at the same time, the current president. It was inevitable to give him some face. Looking at the security guard who was walking over, Jiang Hai chuckled. After hearing Jiang Hai's words, many people's eyes, which were originally looking forward to a good show, suddenly changed at this time. They might not know Jiang Hai's name, but it was not an exaggeration to say that the Soaring Dragon Manor was well known in the top social circles of the United States. After all, he almost monopolized the sales of the best beef. Many people had approached Jiang Hai, wanting to cooperate with him in the beef project, but they had no way to do so. Jiang Hai would not attend these banquets. This was the third time. The first time, he was not famous, and he only met Prawalton. The second time he was in China. Today was the third time. These people had no way to contact Jiang Hai. Now that Jiang Hai suddenly appeared, and it seemed that he had a close relationship with Prawalton, they could not help but think. Soaring Dragon Manor, since you are a guest here, please abide by some rules. After hearing Jiang Hai's self-introduction, Dong Mingluan hesitated. He was the current president of the Walmart Group. It was reasonable to say that Sam's Club was also a part of the Walmart Group. Although he could not intervene, he knew about the income of Sam's Club. Jiang Hai's beef had helped Sam's Club earn more than $130 million this year. Of course, this was only the direct profit. In addition to this direct profit, there were many other ancillary profits. For example, if one went to the supermarket to buy beef, it was impossible for ordinary people to just buy beef. They would definitely buy some other things. This was called the ancillary sales fee. Jiang Hai's beef had been in the market for a year. Oh no, in fact, only half a year. After half a year of fermentation, it had formed a reputation and brand effect in the upper class of the United States. Jiang Hai's beef was sold here, which was equivalent to a living advertisement. According to this year's calculation, the income of Sam's Club's staff related to the beef was about $300 million. $300 million was pure profit. Those directors and the like could not ignore it. After all, Dong Mingluan was only a senior worker, although he had some power now. But his power was given by the board of directors. He had to make money for these people. Therefore, he could not afford to offend the owner of Soaring Dragon Manor. Although he felt that his head was emitting green light, he could not bear it. His eyes were burning with anger as he said to Jiang Hai, "Unruly? I don't feel that there is anything unruly. Prawalton is my girlfriend. There is nothing wrong with me hugging my girlfriend." But after listening to Dong Mingluan's words, Jiang Hai domineeringly hugged Prawalton, then raised his head and said to Dong Mingluan with an arrogant face. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, the people present could not help but burst into an uproar. "Are you here to make trouble?" Looking at Jiang Hai, Dong Mingluan narrowed his eyes and said with a face full of anger, "You can think whatever you want, but I heard that you are ganging up to bully my girlfriend, so I came here mainly to say one thing." Looking at the people in front of him, Jiang Hai raised his hand and said with a serious face, "My beef is sold to Prawalton. If Sam's Club is not under the control of Prawalton, then I will not sell to you. We have not signed a long-term supply contract. My beef is very popular. Before this, I just refused the opportunity to provide beef to the Dubai royal family. But I think, as long as I am willing, this transaction can be established at any time. In other words, it is now a seller's market." Looking at the people in front of him, Jiang Hai did not know who they were, but it did not hinder Jiang Hai from saying these words. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, everyone present took a deep breath. He dared to threaten the Walton family? This Jiang Hai was really a calf who was not afraid of tigers. Now, it was up to the Walton family to accept Jiang Hai's words. However, if the Walton family really fell out with Jiang Hai, then would they have the opportunity to cooperate with Jiang Hai's Soaring Dragon Manor? As for the Dubai royal family that Jiang Hai mentioned, didn't he already refuse? In this matter, whoever came first would get it first. No one would complain about money. They had also tested Jiang Hai's beef before, and it could not be imitated. Then this seller's market would be very stable. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, the audience was silent at this moment. Everyone looked at the Walton family and Dong Mingluan. The final decision of this matter depended on them. As for Prawalton at this time, she had completely lost the strong woman she used to be. She just hugged Jiang Hai's waist and lowered her head. She had never felt as safe as she did today. She knew that Jiang Hai's chips were not light. She also knew that she and Jiang Hai might not be able to reach the end. But what did it matter? With Jiang Hai by her side, she suddenly felt that her experience with Jiang Hai might not be so bad. Chapter 637. Mr. Jiang, our company's personnel transfer should have nothing to do with you. Dong Mingluan's face was so ugly that it made people's hair stand on end. But at this time he had to stand up. His goal was very clear. If Jim Walton's goal was the company, and Sam's Club was the first step, then he knew that it was impossible for him to get the company. But if he could marry Prawalton, it would be equivalent to Sam's Club being under his control. In that case, he would be the son-in-law of the Walton family and control Sam's Club. His position in the business world would be unshakable. He was ready to take both the money and the woman. And such an open scheme made people unable to do anything. No matter how talented and capable Prawalton was, she was just a woman, an illegitimate daughter. In order to keep the power in his hands, Prawalton's father would not let Sam's Club fall into the hands of her brother. So it was necessary to agree to his proposal. But Jiang Hai, who had suddenly appeared, had messed up his plans. It seemed that he couldn't control his lust now. Although he had long regarded Pula Walton, this iceberg royal sister, as his possession, he did not care about her. But now, Jiang Hai's actions made it clear to outsiders that his head wasn't just an ordinary green. And if what Jiang Hai said was true, his efforts would be in vain. If Jiang Hai really refused to cooperate with the Walmart Group, then Jim Walton would not provoke Jiang Hai even if he did not want Sam's Club. Because Jim Walton was first and foremost a businessman, and second, He was the youngest son who wanted to seize the family property. If the Walmart group he took over was full of holes, he would not be happy. And most importantly, the directors of the Walmart group would not let the wealth that Jiang Hai brought to them disappear just like that. Yes, the personnel transfer of the Walmart group has nothing to do with me, but my beef has something to do with me. If Prawalton did not control Sam's Club, I would not sell it to you. Looking at Dong Mingluan in front of him, Jiang Hai glanced at Prawalton beside him. Jiang Hai had no right to their family matters, and he did not want to interfere. But he would protect Prawalton's interests. You. Hearing Jiang Hai's tough retort, Dong Mingluan could not help but be speechless for a while. He would not shout. Do you think you are the only one with beef in the world? He was very clear that Jiang Hai's beef was indeed unique in the world. Although he doesn't know why. But it's true that only Jiang Hai's beef is at that level in this world. Even his ordinary beef tasted much better than ordinary beef. When an entire cow entered the Walmart group, the special grade beef would be removed and placed in Sam's Club for sale. This was because the beef sold there was expensive. Ordinary beef would also be sold in a special area, in ordinary Walmart supermarkets. Although the quality of the beef sold there was the same as ordinary beef, the price was 1/3 more expensive. The beef in Jiang Hai's manor was now a brand, an irreplaceable brand. Jiang Hai didn't care about the outflow of live cattle, but once the live cattle left the grassland, they would gradually degenerate, and they wouldn't be able to raise them at all. Jiang Hai didn't care about the outflow of live cattle, but once the live cattle left the grassland, they would gradually degenerate, and they wouldn't be able to raise them. Angus cows weren't like he cows. In essence, there was a big difference. Not everyone could raise Angus cows to kill he cows. Because of this, Jiang Hai dared to call out Dong Mingluan. But Dong Mingluan didn't dare to say anything. Mr. Jiang, we are having a party today. It is a happy party. Let's not talk about business today. I will reflect what you said to the board of directors. Now it is time to be happy. Looking at the atmosphere on the scene, it was about to drop to the freezing point. At this time, Roberson Walton, who had been standing at the back, said with a smile to Jiang Hai. Then, without giving Jiang Hai time to react, he raised his glass and said loudly to the crowd. Hearing his words, everyone also raised their glasses. The party became lively again, but this time, many people's eyes were consciously or unconsciously glancing at Jiang Hai. Young man, it's a pleasure to meet you. I will seriously consider what you said. However, Roberson Walton walked in front of Jiang Hai and smiled at Jiang Hai. Then, without any desire to talk to Jiang Hai, he left directly. As for Dong Mingluan, he was the same. After fiercely glaring at Jiang Hai, he also left. He felt insulted. Won't you be exposed like this? Seeing them all leave, Prawalton, who was still in Jiang Hai's arms, raised her head and looked at Jiang Hai. She gently bit her lips and said with some worry, "It doesn't matter. I guess this time you will be the president of Sam's Club. At that time, you can help me block those people with ulterior motives. What do you want to eat? I will get it for you." Looking at Prawalton's appearance, Jiang Hai smiled and scratched her nose with his hand, then said to her with a chuckle. Feeling Jiang Hai's action, Prawalton's eyes were a little blurred. "I don't want to eat anything. I want to go with you." Looking at Jiang Hai, Prawalton said seriously, "Go. Where to?" Looking at Prawalton with a puzzled look, Jiang Hai asked strangely, "To your room." But Prawalton is more direct than Jiang Hai. A pair of fiery eyes looked at Jiang Hai. Feeling the passion in her heart, Jiang Hai did not hesitate. After a chuckle, he pulled Prawalton away. Looking at the two leaving figures, many men showed a look that only men can understand. As for Dong Mingluan, he was even more hateful. He felt that he was now a ninja turtle. After the two left the banquet, they took the elevator directly to the floor of Jiang Hai's suite and entered the room. As soon as the door closed, Prawalton had already rushed up, her hands around Jiang Hai's neck, and she kissed Jiang Hai's mouth heavily. Now she really doesn't know how to describe her heart. The sense of security brought by Jiang Hai broke out at this time. These days she had been thinking of a way, but she found that this was an open scheme. This was a dead knot. Her family would definitely not let the power of Walmart fall into someone else's hands, because of her relationship with Dong Mingluan. So it seemed that her relationship with Dong Mingluan was a dead knot. The only thing she can do is to announce today that she will resign as the president of Sam's Club. In this way, she can protect herself. But for a career woman, her career is actually higher than everything else. To make such a decision, one could see how bitter her heart was. But at this time, Jiang Hai was like a prince on a white horse, descending from the sky, stepping on colorful clouds. Not only did he save her, but he also saved her career. Now Prawalton's inner feelings completely broke out, and she completely took the initiative. As the two of them kissed passionately, the temperature in the room continued to rise. Unknowingly, the two of them came to the sofa in the living room. At this time, the two of them were basically naked, along with a meandering low shout. There was a rhythmic drumbeat in the room. 10 minutes later, the battlefield between the two of them rolled from the sofa to the floor, then to the wall, to the door, to the carpet in the room. And by the time they reached the bed again, it was already 2 hours later. During this time, Jiang Hai has already done it 3 times, but Prawalton didn't seem to know fatigue, and was still strong. At this time, she was lying on Jiang Hai's body, with her hands around Jiang Hai's head, kissing him deeply. At the same time, she let Jiang Hai's hands grab her 2 indescribable places. Her body was constantly moving, and she had no intention of stopping. You can't take it like this. When Prawalton finally took a breath, Jiang Hai couldn't help but smack her butt, and then said to Prawalton helplessly, it's fine. I'll be yours tonight. I want to be with you for a whole night. If the front can't do it, I still have the back. If the back can't do it, I still have the mouth. Today, I just want to be with you. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Prawalton shook her head frantically, her eyes staring at Jiang Hai. Her eyes were full of passion. Looking at Prawalton's appearance, Jiang Hai knew that she was serious. However, although Jiang Hai usually had a good mentality, he really didn't admire anyone in this regard. Today, he was going to tame this wild horse. With a flip, he pressed Prawalton under his body again. Jiang Hai's battle began. A night without words. Even if there were words, they couldn't be described. So just treat it as a night without words. When the next morning's sun shone into the hotel room, Jiang Hai was also groggily awakened by the urge to pee. He covered his eyes with his hand, and glanced at the phone next to the bedside table. Unknowingly, it was already past 7 in the morning. Just as he was about to move, he found that his indescribable place was still connected to Prawalton's back. When he moved, Prawalton, who was in his arms, couldn't help but moan softly. Last night, Prawalton was indeed abnormally crazy. As she said, if the front couldn't do it, then the mouth. If the mouth couldn't do it, then the back. In the end, Jiang Hai didn't remember how many times he came, but their sheets were completely wet. Looking at the situation between the two, Jiang Hai slowly withdrew, but when he withdrew, some cough flowed out. Feeling that something was wrong, Prawalton couldn't help but wake up in an instant. She touched her back, then looked at Jiang Hai, and couldn't help but blush. Then she wanted to get out of bed and go to the bathroom, but just as her feet touched the ground, she couldn't help but cry out softly. She was so crazy last night, although Jiang Hai had already transferred spiritual energy to her. But spiritual energy couldn't cure her craziness 100%. So some pain and soft feet were inevitable. Let's go together. Looking at her appearance, Jiang Hai also smiled and got out of bed. To be honest, his feet were also a little soft. Picking up Prawalton beside him, Jiang Hai went to the bathroom with her. After going to the bathroom, the two took a shower together. But when taking a shower, it was inevitable. Man, everyone knows. Do you still need it? Let's continue. Seeing the changes in Jiang Hai, Prawalton couldn't help but smile at Jiang Hai. Forget it, your body can't stand it. Hearing what Prawalton said, Jiang Hai's mind shook, but then he shook his head firmly. He is not looking for a professional woman. Prawalton is his woman. Well, one of them. He won't let her be too tired. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Prawalton chuckled, but her hands touched him. It doesn't matter. I may not be able to do that, but my mouth and hands have recovered. After whispering in Jiang Hai's ear, she squatted down and began to do the unspeakable war. About half an hour later, the two took a shower again and returned to the room. Jiang Hai let Prawalton lean for a while, and he went to change the sheets first. Then the two didn't wear clothes and just lay on the bed naked. Jiang, do you know my story? Looking at Jiang Hai, Prawalton hesitated for a moment, then took the initiative to ask Jiang Hai. Well, I really don't know. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai thought for a moment. He really didn't seem to be familiar with Prawalton. He only knew that her name was Prawalton, and he also knew her body structure, but he really didn't know her background. Let me tell you. Looking at Jiang Hai, Prawalton laid in Jiang Hai's arms and said to Jiang Hai, speaking of Prawalton's background, it wasn't very strange. It was a bit melodramatic. Her mother used to be Roberson Walton's secretary. In China, there was a tradition of the secretary doing the work, and when there was nothing to do, the secretary coughed. When Roberson Walton was 30 years old, he and Pra Walton's mother gave birth to her. But that woman wasn't a qualified mother. In fact, it wasn't an exaggeration to say that she was raised by a B*TCH. After exchanging Prawalton for $3 million, she ran away with a man. Prawalton was an illegitimate daughter, but she was raised by Roberson Walton. But because of her mother, Roberson Walton didn't like her. Roberson's wife didn't like her, and her brothers and sisters didn't like her either. In such an environment, Prawalton developed her current temper. It was very strange, but also very stubborn. However, if she put it this way, at most, she was just a girl with a strange personality. But everything started when she was 14 years old. It wasn't the first time that Prawalton had sex with Jiang Hai, and she liked women. It all started from that time. Jiang Hai didn't want any plot to abuse the owner. Here Jiang Hai simply skipped over it. In short, it was related to her family, and Prawalton had already taken revenge. But after that incident, Prawalton no longer trusted men, because in her opinion, men were unreliable. From then on, she was only interested in girls, because she felt that only women wouldn't hurt women. But later, she found that she seemed to be thinking too much. Indeed, there were many women who took pleasure in hurting other women. But that was another story later. When she had money and power, she also collected a lot of girls, like Cheryl and the others. After hearing Prawalton's story, Jiang Hai held her tightly in his arms. He didn't think that this girl's previous experience was like this. No wonder she didn't care about men. But now it seemed that he was really a lucky man. You're the first man to walk in here. I hope you can always live here. I don't want to marry you, because I've investigated your situation. But I like you very much, very much. Let's maintain the current situation, okay? Until we die. Leaning on Jiang Hai's chest, listening to Jiang Hai's strong heartbeat, Prawalton whispered. Of course, no problem. Looking at the woman in front of him, Jiang Hai made a promise seriously. Maybe he couldn't give her much. Prawalton was the same as other people. Jiang Hai's other women were all given by him. But Prawalton wasn't something that Jiang Hai could give. They were equal to each other. Now Jiang Hai could give her what she wanted, so he wouldn't be stingy with these things. I want it again. Let's continue. Hearing Jiang Hai's promise, Prawalton couldn't help but raise her head and say with a smile. It was said that sweet talk was the most effective attack on a woman. Jiang Hai didn't know how to sweet talk, but because she knew his character, Prawalton knew that Jiang Hai would definitely keep his words. Forget it. Stay here obediently. You haven't eaten well for the past few days, right? I can feel your ribs. Do you want to eat something? Hearing her words, Jiang Hai couldn't help but slap her meaty part again, then sat up and said to her. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Prawalton shook Jiang Hai's arm coquettishly. I don't want to eat. I just want to eat you, Prawalton said, while sweeping Jiang Hai's lower part. I'll deal with you after the meal. Feeling Prawalton's movements, Jiang Hai couldn't help but be a little dumbfounded. This girl was really crazy. Slapping her hand away, Jiang Hai shook his head and stood up. He put on the bathrobe next to him, picked up the phone in the room, and called the front desk to order a table of food. Whether Prawalton was hungry or not, Jiang Hai was hungry. Chapter 638. The Hilton Hotel was quite fast. Although one of their heirs was quite slow, the chef here was still very capable. About half an hour later, a dining cart had already appeared in front of Jiang Hai's room. After opening the door and giving the person a tip, Jiang Hai did not let the person in, because at this time, Prawalton was still naked. He personally pushed the cart into the room. After seeing the food, Prawalton was still naked. After seeing the food, she was not hungry at all. In fact, she was quite hungry now. She climbed up and sat on the bed, then opened the lid of the food placed on the bed. In an instant, a big steak appeared in front of her. Wow! Looking at the steaming steak, Prawalton couldn't help but shout excitedly. Then she reached out her hand to grab it. Today's Prawalton seemed to have returned to more than 10 years ago, when she was still a child. She was completely different from the iceberg and the strength when she first saw Jiang Hai. She only had a trace of childishness. However, Jiang Hai wouldn't let her grab it everywhere. After slapping her little hand, he put the food in front of the prepared table. What Jiang Hai ordered was a pure Western food. 2 steaks, 1 pasta, 1 lasagna, 1 baked lobster with cheese, plus a bowl of beef, turnip and potato soup. Well, super soup. Finally, there was a basket of bread and butter. Although there wasn't much, it was still very satisfying. Jiang Hai and Prawalton sat across the table. The two didn't eat anything since last night, so they were naturally hungry now. They began to eat quickly, but compared to Jiang Hai, Prawalton's appetite was much smaller. She only had the steak and some pasta. She was already full without even eating the bread. However, the rest of Jiang Hai's food naturally couldn't run away. But just as Jiang Hai was eating happily, his body couldn't help but tremble, because at this time, he felt a pair of small feet unknowingly came to his groin. Feeling this scene, Jiang Hai couldn't help but look at Prawalton in front of him. When Prawalton saw Jiang Hai looking at her, she just sat there and smiled foolishly. Looking down, the pair of small white feet, after feeling Jiang Hai's change, began to imitate his hand and began to move. This was the first time Jiang Hai felt this kind of feeling. He had to admit, it was a bit interesting. Eat, don't make trouble. He patted Prawalton's calf. Well, it was more of a touch than a pat. You eat your food, I'll play mine. This is my baby, my favorite thing in the world. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Prawalton raised her head proudly, continued to move her feet, and said with a smile, You're digging your own grave. At this time, after Jiang Hai ate a few more mouthfuls, he couldn't eat anymore. He couldn't help but shake his head, then stood up, and pounced on Prawalton amidst her charming laughter. Just as Jiang Hai's Prawalton was shamelessly there, the executives of Walmart were holding a high-level meeting. The founder of Walmart was Sam Walton. Although it was a listed company, most of the shares belonged to Sam Walton. After Sam Walton's death, his shares were handed over to his children. Although it seemed that Roberson Walton had the most shares, it was not by much. That was why Jim Walton could easily threaten his position. As long as he roped in a few people, he could easily surpass his brother's shares. As for the other brothers and sisters, they all remained neutral. They only needed to divide the money. However, although the people in the meeting at this time were at least worth tens of billions of dollars, the location of the meeting was very simple. It was a very small conference room, which was also a tradition of the Walton family. Prawalton liked to show off because of her mother, but the Walton family was famous for being stingy. When Sam Walton was still alive, he was very stingy. He was a billionaire, but he had never bought a mansion. He had always lived in Pentonville, and often drove his old pickup truck in and out of town. Everyone in town knew that he was very stingy. Every time he got a haircut, he only spent $5, which was the lowest price in town. However, this old man donated hundreds of millions of dollars to 5 universities in the United States, and set up many scholarship schools all over the country. His sons also inherited his tradition. In the largest group in the United States, when Jim Walton was the president, his office was only 20 square meters. This was because he was the youngest son, so he was more arrogant. As the chairman, Roberson Walton's office was only 12 square meters, and the office facilities were very old. If they weren't broken, they would never be replaced. Therefore, in the circle of rich people in the United States, some people jealously said that Walmart was a place where the poor opened and the poor bought. However, these people were just jealous. The world's largest retail giant was not as simple as it seemed. Their stores were really all over the world. However, they were really stingy. The people in this room together had a net worth of more than hundreds of billions of dollars. But they asked for the smallest conference room. It was even a little crowded with these people sitting here. Big brother, don't you want to talk about what we should do now? But no matter what the conference room was like, they were used to it. They were here to talk business. Sitting at the bottom, Jim Walton looked at Roberson Walton and said with a smile, "I want to hear your opinions." Hearing Jim Walton's words, Roberson also said with a calm face, "You can't promise him, absolutely not. We can't be controlled by a child." As soon as Roberson Walton's voice fell, Dong Mingluan stood up with red eyes and shouted loudly, "He didn't sleep last night, and he couldn't sleep." As soon as he closed his eyes, he seemed to see Pra Walton and Jiang Hai having sex. But it was true that the two of them were having sex, but not knowing and knowing were really different. Now he had to compromise with Jiang Hai. As long as he was still a man, he would never do it. But if you don't promise him, can you get his beef? At this time, an old woman sitting next to him said softly. This woman was called Alice Walton, Sam Walton's eldest daughter. She used to be the second richest person in the world. But in the Walton family, she was a woman after all. So she didn't manage the company's operations. All she wanted was money. Hearing Alice Walton's words, Dong Mingluan couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. This sentence was cutting the ground from under the pot. Just like what Alice Walton said, he couldn't guarantee that he would be able to get Jiang Hai's beef. He couldn't afford to gamble. If Pra Walton's position was really removed, Jiang Hai really wouldn't supply. Who would they go to? They couldn't lose this supplier. Although it wasn't a matter of life and death, it was far from being comparable to a change. Sister-in-law, what do you think? Looking at Dong Mingluan's red face, Jim Walton couldn't help but smile, and said to a fat white woman next to him. This woman was called Christy Walton, but she was actually not a member of the Walton family. Her husband was called John Walton, the second son of Sam Walton, but he passed away and left the family property to her. According to this year's Forbes list, her net worth was $20 billion. In fact, she was the richest among the people here. But she knew when to advance and when to retreat. She knew what she could say and what she couldn't say. When she heard Sam Walton's words, she just smiled and said that she had no opinion. Jim, big sister, and the others won't have anything to say. What do you think? After asking a group of people, except for Dong Mingluan, who strongly expressed that he wanted to fight Jiang Hai to the death, the others remained neutral. They just wanted to see how the two brothers would deal with it. Roberson Walton glanced at Jim Walton opposite him. In fact, the only people who really spoke were them. We can't lose this supplier. Let Pra Walton be the president. But brother, after this, do you still dare to use her? Jim Walton knocked on the table and said with a smile. You don't have to worry about this. Hearing Jim Walton's words, Roberson also didn't show his emotions, just said lightly. At this time, Jiang Hai and the others didn't know that when they were happy, the Walmart executives here had already made a decision. The two didn't leave the room today. They had to admit that the fighting power of American women was indeed strong, extremely strong. She also fought with Jiang Hai for a day. Although it was because of the aura, she was still not completely suppressed by Jiang Hai. Sometimes she would even resist, but when she resisted, she was suppressed faster. It wasn't until the evening that Pra Walton received a call from Elizabeth Rowland, telling her that the head office had made a new decision. Next year, she would continue to worry about the president of Sam's Club. After receiving the news, Pra Walton couldn't help but excitedly hug Jiang Hai again. She had to admit that Jiang Hai really did her a big favor this time, a very big favor. After the news was released, many people knew the news for the first time. The people who attended last night's party also talked about what happened last night in some high-level circles. However, in their words, the main character was not the Walton family's internal strife, but Jiang Hai. This young Huaxia man had the ability to turn an ordinary beef into a superior grade beef. He was not an ordinary person, as he could force the Walton family to compromise. This guy could not be said to be unimportant, But people were more concerned about his beef. They were 100% sure that there was a secret recipe. But what is the secret recipe? They don't know, but they are very interested to find out. After confirming that she was fine, Prawalton and Jiang Hai stayed in New York for a day, then returned to her home in Atlantic City. In recent days, not only was she worried, but even the staff of Sam's Club didn't have a good time. She had to go back to comfort them, which was the most important thing. Jiang Hai didn't go back with her, but returned to his manor. In the past 2 days and 3 nights, Jiang Hai didn't leave his suite, so it was needless to say what he was doing inside. When Prawalton recovered, she would come to Jiang Hai to do that kind of unspeakable thing. Fortunately, Jiang Hai's body was good, and he had spiritual energy. Otherwise, with this kind of intensity, either he or Prawalton would die. After all, a person's energy was limited, and they were playing too much. When Jiang Hai returned to the manor, Cheryl Lee also got the exact news, but she wasn't in a hurry to leave. Instead, she wanted to thank Jiang Hai in person. Originally, she was going to use her body to repay Jiang Hai, but recently, Jiang Hai didn't have any desire. He shouldn't want to touch a woman for at least 3 days. Seeing that Jiang Hai didn't have the urge to be with her, Cheryl Lee was actually very moved. It seems that Jiang Hai didn't really help because of that kind of thing. He had some respect for her and Prawalton. This made Cheryl feel that Jiang Hai was actually a good person. It's just that he had too many women. After staying here for 3 days, even if she was stupid, she could see that, not to mention Aphrodite and the others, the 5 women in Jiang Hai's villa, were actually interested in Jiang Hai. If Jiang Hai was willing, they would go and do something with Jiang Hai. Perhaps only a fool like Jiang Hai couldn't see it. After having a deep kiss with Jiang Hai, Cheryl Lee drove her sports car and left Jiang Hai's manor. She wanted to rush back to Atlantic City. She hadn't seen Prawalton for a while. Since Jiang Hai wasn't going to let her stay here for the night, she had to find her real other half. Although this was a bit awkward, it was the truth. Jiang Hai and Prawalton should be rivals in love. However, the 2 parties might not think so. At this time, apart from those women, a man walked into Prawalton's heart for the first time, and Jiang Hai's heart, which was already full, also walked into Prawalton. No one knew what would happen between the 2 of them. In fact, even Jiang Hai didn't know if there was a female lead in this book, or who the female lead was. Unknowingly, more than a year had passed, and the female lead still hadn't been decided. It was very tragic. Chapter 639. Rubbing his sleepy eyes, Jiang Hai walked down the stairs step by step. In advertising terms, it was as if his whole body was hollowed out. He walked to the first floor and lay on the sofa, unwilling to move. Looking at his decadent appearance, Bernice, who was sitting next to him drinking milk and eating oatmeal, couldn't help but look at him seriously. "What did you do in New York these few days? Why are you so decadent?" In fact, since coming back last night, Bernice found that Jiang Hai was a little decadent. She originally thought that Jiang Hai was tired. After all, he had driven for several hours. But looking at Jiang Hai's current appearance, logically speaking, this shouldn't be the case. Although she hadn't personally experienced Jiang Hai's physical fitness, she more or less had some understanding. Jiang Hai should have recovered after a nap, so why was he still so dispirited? These days, I was mainly talking to the Walton family about the deal. Because I was a little tired, I didn't sleep much. Hearing Bernice's words, Jiang Hai's eyes flashed for a moment, but he quickly looked at Bernice and said in a serious tone. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Bernice frowned. Her sixth sense told her that Jiang Hai was talking nonsense. What kind of person was Jiang Hai? She had been watching him for several months. This guy was usually so lazy that it made people's hair stand on end. And it could be seen that Jiang Hai's IQ wasn't too high. He was too lazy to think about things like copywriting, tricks, and so on. He just liked to win with his strength. How could you force such a person to talk to the Walton family? Regardless of whether others believed it or not, she wouldn't believe it anyway. Her eyes clearly said that she didn't believe it. However, Jiang Hai chose to ignore her gaze. He couldn't say that he had been rolling in bed in a hotel for 3 days. In fact, it proved that with Jiang Hai's aura, there was no land that was plowed to waste. only cows that were exhausted to death. Well, you have to take care of your body when you're working. There's a big family waiting for you to eat. In the end, after hesitating for a long time, Bernice chose to believe Jiang Hai. She sat there, put her 2 long legs on the coffee table, and leaned against it to eat. Looking at Bernice's long legs, Jiang Hai subconsciously thought of Prawalton. Fortunately, he quickly suppressed this thought. He took a deep breath and muttered, "If my heart is as clear as ice, I won't be alarmed even if the sky collapses." He finally suppressed the evil fire, but he didn't dare to sit here. Instead, he went directly to the kitchen and ate some food. After eating some food, Jiang Hai felt a lot more comfortable. After stretching for a bit, he went to the stable to take a look. He had not seen little Xiao for many days. He wanted to see this little big horse. He went to feed it some carrots, and then strolled around, feeling the cold wind blowing on his face. Jiang Hai was also a lot more energetic. He stretched his sore waist and Jiang Hai raised his head. At this time, the color of the sky above his manor was not very good. Although there were no dark clouds, there was a thin layer of clouds blocking the sky, making it look gray. In Winthrop in November, the weather was very cold, and the wind was not small. He didn't know when the next snow would come, but it shouldn't make Jiang Hai wait too long. After walking around outside, Jiang Hai returned to the manor for lunch. It was obvious that Jiang Hai was home, and Xiaoya was also very happy. She made a lot of delicious food. She also made soup dumplings that Jiang Hai wanted to eat the day before he left. After eating a delicious lunch, Jiang Hai said. After lunch, Jiang Hai went back to his room to sleep, which was rare. He had indeed been lacking sleep these days. Jiang Hai slept until 2 o'clock in the afternoon before he woke up. However, he didn't wake up because he had woken up, but because his phone had woken him up. He glanced at the name on the phone. It turned out to be Selena Gomez, which surprised Jiang Hai a little. Selena? Why is she looking for me? Since the last time he took Selena Gomez out to play, Jiang Hai and her had less contact. Although basically every 2 or 3 days, they would text and video call each other. In front of Jiang Hai, Selena Gomez was very casual. Almost every video call was when she had just taken a shower and was not wearing clothes. She would video call Jiang Hai just like that. It was obvious that she trusted Jiang Hai a lot. Otherwise, if these scenes were recorded and posted on the internet, it would cause a storm. Of course, Jiang Hai would not do that. Therefore, Jiang Hai knew about her recent situation. A few days ago, when New York started to become cold, she returned to Los Angeles. She should still be in Los Angeles now. Why was she calling him at this time? However, although he was curious, Jiang Hai still picked up the phone and asked her directly, "Hello, Selena, are you looking for me?" "Hello, Jiang, where are you?" Listening to Jiang Hai's voice, Selena Gomez's side was a little chaotic. Selena's voice was almost shouting, which made Jiang Hai a little confused. What the hell is this? I'm at home taking a nap. Rubbing his eyes, Jiang Hai said to Selena Gomez. What nap? Come, get up, come to New York, I'll take you out to play. Hearing that Jiang Hai was sleeping, Selena Gomez couldn't help but spit. She knew Jiang Hai. This guy never slept during the day. He must be teasing her. Play what? Sister, I just came back from New York yesterday. Hearing that he was going to New York again, Jiang Hai's forehead had 3 black lines. And then he said helplessly. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Selena Gomez on the other side was also speechless. Are you coming or not? I'm introducing you to a beauty. Are you not happy? Facing Jiang Hai on the other side of the phone, Selena Gomez said with some anger. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai sighed. He really couldn't move. However, considering that if he didn't go, there would be some estrangement with Selena Gomez in the future, Jiang Hai nodded and said that he would go in a while. After receiving the news that Jiang Hai would come, Selena Gomez also smiled. After staying in bed for a while, Jiang Hai forced his body, which had not recovered, to get out of bed. He put on the set of clothes he was familiar with and went downstairs. Seeing Jiang Hai coming down in clothes, the girls who were downstairs couldn't help but be stunned, and their faces were not very good. Are you going out again? Looking at Jiang Hai, Bernice said with some dissatisfaction. Well, I'm going to New York again. There are still some things that haven't been settled last time, so I have to go again. With a weak voice, Jiang Hai slowly walked to the door, but his eyes kept dodging. Jiang Hai also knew that he was not born to lie, so not letting them see his eyes was also one of his disguises. Oh, when will you come back? Hearing that Jiang Hai was going back because of the last incident, although she was a little reluctant, Bernice and the others would not stop him. But Bernice still said seriously. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai frowned. I don't know, but I may come back tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. I shouldn't be gone for too long. After thinking about it, Jiang Hai gave an uncertain time. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Bernice and the others looked at each other. Then go, be careful on the road, don't wait until Christmas to come back. Hearing their words, Jiang Hai also smiled awkwardly and walked out of the villa. Looking at his leisurely little home, he couldn't help but sigh. He hated being busy the most, but he didn't know why he was so busy recently. It shouldn't be. After getting in the car, Jiang Hai stepped on the accelerator, and the car went to New York City. When he left, it was already 3 o'clock in the afternoon. When he arrived, it was almost 7 o'clock. After entering New York, Jiang Hai called Selena Gomez. Originally, he thought that Selena Gomez called him to spend time with him, but he didn't expect that she actually gave him a KTV seat, which made Jiang Hai a little speechless. It seemed that she did say on the phone that she wanted to introduce a beauty to him. Originally, Jiang Hai thought that she was joking, but now it seemed that it was not as simple as a joke. In order to prevent drinking later, Jiang Hai deliberately bought 2 sandwiches and a set of pancakes on the street before he went. After eating first, he went to the place. When he arrived, it was already around 8 o'clock in the evening. This KTV, in fact, was not an exaggeration to call it a nightclub. The first floor was indeed for dancing, but the second floor was a special box. In New York, there were many rich people and celebrities, so in order to protect the privacy of these people, many people opened such a place with excellent security, so that reporters couldn't enter. Here, if one wasn't a celebrity, then they needed someone to bring them in. Otherwise, ordinary people wouldn't be able to enter, just like the place Jiang Hai went to last time. At that time, if it weren't for Moses Adams, Jiang Hai wouldn't have been able to get in. It was the same today. After parking the car, Jiang Hai walked into the nightclub. The first floor was naturally very noisy, and Jiang Hai was not interested. He took the elevator to the second floor, but just as he got out of the elevator, he was stopped by 2 big men. Sir, I'm sorry, please show me your membership card. Hearing the 2 big men, Jiang Hai could not help but be stunned. How can I have a membership card here? But fortunately, his reaction was not slow. He immediately remembered to call Selena Gomez. The phone was connected after 2 rings. After explaining the situation, Selena Gomez rushed over in less than a minute. Looking at Selena Gomez in front of him, Jiang Hai could not help but light up, and then his vision went dark. Because at this time, Selena Gomez did not come in casual clothes, but wore a black leather skirt. But what Jiang Hai cared about most was her cleavage. It was almost the same as not wearing it. The deep V-neck opened all the way to her belly button. Jiang Hai is a traditional Huaxia person, and his possessiveness is very strong. Although he knows that he can't make Selena Gomez follow him wholeheartedly, after all, his surname is Jiang, not Long, and not Outyin. But when he saw this situation, he was still a little upset. He took off his coat and put it on Selena Gomez. And Selena Gomez, who was telling the 2 security guards that Jiang Hai was her friend, felt Jiang Hai's action. She couldn't help but be stunned for a moment, and then a sweet smile appeared on her face. She tightened her clothes, and regardless of whether Jiang Hai's clothes matched her, she smiled and pulled Jiang Hai's hand. She directly took Jiang Hai's arm and walked toward one of the rooms. Have you missed me recently? Looking at Jiang Hai, Selena Gomez said with a smile. Have you missed me? Looking at her, Jiang Hai touched his nose and then asked. I won't miss a big bad guy like you. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Selena Gomez wrinkled her nose and said cutely. Looking at her appearance, Jiang Hai also smiled, and then followed her into a room. When Jiang Hai walked in, he found that there were a lot of people in the room. Most of them were women, and they were all tall beauties. There were also a few men, and some of them were more familiar. Jiang Hai looked at the room with more than 20 people, and he couldn't help but be stunned. He didn't like this kind of occasion very much. Come on, let me introduce you. This is my boyfriend Jiang Hai. He is a rich man. But let me tell you, don't have any ideas about him. These are all my friends, so I won't introduce them one by one. Seeing the door open, everyone in the room couldn't help but look over. When they saw that it was Jiang Hai, they couldn't help but be stunned, and Jiang Hai was also stunned. At this time, Selena Gomez jumped out and pulled Jiang Hai with a smug face and introduced him. When they heard Selena Gomez say that Jiang Hai was a rich man, everyone in the room couldn't help but shush. Obviously, these people didn't care too much about Selena Gomez's words, and Selena Gomez also pulled Jiang Hai into the room, came to the front of the bar, and sat there face to face with Jiang Hai. What's the situation? I thought you just asked me to come over to have fun. Glancing at the people in the room, Jiang Hai shrugged helplessly. He still didn't understand what the hell was going on. These people are some singers and actors. Oh, most of them are models. Look at those tall guys with long legs, they are all supermodels. I have a show tomorrow, and I'll give you some benefits. Let's broaden your horizons. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Selena Gomez also laughed, and said with a smile while handing an invitation to Jiang Hai. Chapter 640. After receiving the invitation, Jiang Hai opened it in front of her. The invitation was a pink envelope with a golden pattern. There was something gilded on it that Jiang Hai didn't know. It was printed with a string of English words, Victoria's Secret. Scott of Victoria. Looking at the string of English words, Jiang Hai slowly read it out loud. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Selena Gomez couldn't help but roll her eyes at him. Then she clicked on the invitation. This is Victoria's Secret. Selena Gomez looked at Jiang Hai and said seriously, I know, a company that sells vests. No wonder you're dressed like this. Glancing at the thing, Jiang Hai put it back in the invitation. He had heard of this brand before. Well, he had only heard of it. Why would a man ask about the brand of women's vests when he had nothing to do? He's not a pervert. Although you're right. Why do I feel that these words coming out of your mouth are so low class? But I like it, hee. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Selena Gomez shook her head proudly, and then said with a smile, I was invited by them as this year's guest singer. I don't have to walk the runway, but I have to wear a little cool. You know, those people don't come here to look at down jackets. Haha, what do you want to drink? I'll get it. Looking at Jiang Hai's helpless expression, Selena Gomez couldn't help but smile. Then she wisely changed the topic. Beer. I don't like to drink anything else. Jiang Hai shrugged and said helplessly, This is Selena Gomez's career. He has no right to interfere. This is also because his relationship with Selena Gomez is somewhat similar to Pra Walton's. Something did happen between them, and their relationship is a bit vague, but Jiang Hai really has no right to interfere with the other party. If the other party was the female lead and dared to dress like this, Jiang Hai would scold her to death. Well, if she dressed like this in front of Jiang Hai, it would be pretty good. But the problem now is that it seems that Jiang Hai has a bigger problem. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Selena Gomez also smiled and left here. She went to the side to get a beer, but less than 10 seconds after she left, a white woman walked over. This woman is indeed very beautiful. She has a fairy-like aura on her body, and she is also wearing a very cool clothes. After walking in front of Jiang Hai, she sat directly in front of Selena Gomez. Hi, hello. Seeing her sit down, Jiang Hai was somewhat embarrassed, but she first greeted Jiang Hai in advance. Hello. After responding, Jiang Hai began to look for Selena Gomez in the crowd. He was a little insecure. My name is Ally Golding, a good friend of Selena Gomez, and one of the resident singers this time. I heard Selena Gomez mention you. Nice to meet you. Seeing Jiang Hai's slightly impolite behavior, the other party didn't care. Instead, she smiled and said to Jiang Hai, then she reached out her hand. Jiang Hai also shook her hand, but Jiang Hai really didn't know who she was. Oh, hello, I've heard your song. Nice to meet you, nice to meet you. Although Jiang Hai didn't know who she was, she said that she was a resident singer, so she should be a singer. So Jiang Hai said with a little guilty conscience. Oh, you've heard my song? Sing a song for me? But after hearing Jiang Hai's words, the woman was very curious. She couldn't help but raise her eyebrows and ask Jiang Hai. This time, Jiang Hai was Spartan. How would he know who this woman was? In an instant, Jiang Hai felt that his embarrassment was about to recur. What the hell is this? This is too embarrassing. Okay, ally, I told you before my boyfriend doesn't listen to our music. But just when Jiang Hai was at his most awkward, Selena Gomez walked over with a smile and half a bottle of beer in her hand. The beer here was the 330 milliliters, very small bottles, so 6 bottles together didn't look very big. She put down the beer and opened 3 bottles directly. Jiang Hai had one, she had one, and she handed one to the woman. I know, but he just said that he heard my song, so I'm also very curious. After taking the beer, Ally Golding also said with a smile. Okay, don't say that you don't know this is Eastern courtesy. Selena Gomez rolled her eyes and said with a helpless expression, Hey sisters, we're here. Just as Selena Gomez was talking, the door of the room suddenly opened again. Then, a beautiful woman with lips that looked like she had just eaten walked in with 2 young, but very youthful and beautiful girls. When Selena Gomez saw the 3 of them, she couldn't help but frown. Did you call them? Seeing the 3 people who walked in, Selena Gomez's expression was a little unpleasant. Come on, that's just a rumor. You can't just disappear because of a scumbag. Seeing Selena Gomez's unpleasant face, Ally Golding said with some helplessness. Hearing her words, Selena Gomez couldn't help but be silent. But at this moment, the 3 people who came in also greeted everyone in the room and saw Jiang Hai and the other 2 sitting here. Cough. Well, actually they ignored Jiang Hai and only saw Selena Gomez and Ally Golding. Hey Ally Selena, we haven't hung out together for a while, right? The woman walked over and put one hand on Ally Golding's shoulder and the other hand on Selena Gomez's shoulder. Her words were somewhat apologetic to Selena Gomez. Hearing her taking the initiative to express goodwill, Selena Gomez didn't know how to respond. Hey Taylor, you're late. Come, let me introduce you. This is Jiang Hai, Selena's boyfriend. Jiang, this is Taylor Swift, a good friend of mine and Selena's. Seeing that the atmosphere was a little awkward, Ally Golding couldn't help but speak with a smile. After hearing her words, Jiang Hai also stood up. Because he heard Selena's words and knew that she and Taylor didn't get along, Jiang Hai didn't show too much enthusiasm. He just smiled and nodded as a greeting. As for who this woman was, Jiang Hai could only say that he didn't care about the American entertainment industry. If you were talking about an NBA star, he probably knew, but if it was a Hollywood or Grammy-winning actress, Jiang Hai really didn't know. Jiang Hai, Soaring Dragon Manor? Taylor Swift looked at Jiang Hai, narrowed her eyes and asked softly. It's me. However, Jiang Hai didn't expect her to recognize him. It was a little surprising. Excuse me, Selena. I think we need to talk. Ellie, come too. Taylor Swift smiled apologetically at Jiang Hai. Taylor Swift forcefully pulled Selena and gave Ellie a look. Then the 3 women walked to a corner in the distance. As soon as they reached the corner, Taylor Swift's face became gloomy. Selena, are you crazy? That guy is your boyfriend. A few days ago he was Prawalton's man. Taylor Swift pointed at Jiang Hai and said angrily. Hearing her words, Ally Golding couldn't help but be stunned. Wait a minute, Taylor Prawalton? That person from the Walmart group? What does this have to do with her? Ellie Golding extended her hand and stopped Taylor Swift from continuing. Then she asked curiously, Don't worry about it. Ellie, this news has spread in the upper class, just a few days ago. Taylor Swift sighed as she looked at Ellie Golding, and then told her about what happened at the Hilton Hotel a few days ago. I know, in fact, I'm not his real girlfriend. We are just in that kind of relationship. But after hearing Taylor Swift's words, Selena Gomez shrugged and said indifferently. After hearing her words, the 2 women were shocked. Oh my God, Selena, are you crazy? You are just one of that guy's lovers? Oh my God. I think that guy looks quite honest, but I didn't expect him to be such a person. Selena, you have to break up with him quickly. Ally Golding looked at Selena Gomez and said seriously. She really didn't expect Jiang Hai to be such a person. Selena, Justin is a scumbag. I've never thought of using him to cause you any harm. If I did, I'll apologize to you now. But you can't do this. Your taste in men is really terrible. Taylor Swift looked at Selena Gomez and said seriously. The relationship between them was originally very close, but then something bad happened because of Justin Bieber. Since then, the relationship between the two was a little awkward, although the two had nothing to do with Justin now. But after meeting Taylor Swift, Selena Gomez still hated Taylor Swift. But Taylor Swift was 3 years older than her, after all, and she couldn't watch her sister be cheated by Jiang Hai. You don't understand the things between us. Jiang Hai is a good person, he won't hurt me. The initiative between us is actually mine, not his. He is like a poppy flower, irresistible. Looking back at Jiang Hai, who was sitting there and studying the beer in front of him, Selena Gomez said with a smile. She knew that Jiang Hai was not a good person. Even Jiang Hai was definitely not a bad person. She liked to see Jiang Hai like this. This Jiang Hai was indeed very cute. Oh my god, he must have cast Eastern magic on you. But Selena Gomez looked as if she had eaten a heavy weight. Taylor Swift and Ally Goulding could not help but look at each other. They could not let their little sister sink deeper and deeper. At this moment, they happened to see a woman who came with Taylor Swift walk in front of Jiang Hai. Seeing this scene, they could not help but smile, because they were very familiar with that woman. With her around, it would not be a problem for Selena Gomez to see Jiang Hai's true nature. Since you trust that guy so much, I'll let you see if this guy can withstand the test. Taylor Swift turned Selena Gomez's shoulder and said in Selena Gomez's ear. Her eyes were also fixed on Jiang Hai and that woman. Hello, are you Jiang Hai? My name is Kendall Jenner. I heard that you have a manner? The woman walked in front of Jiang Hai with a smile. Without asking Jiang Hai if he agreed, she sat directly opposite Jiang Hai and said to Jiang Hai with a charming face. I do have a manner. Hearing the words of the woman in front of him, Jiang Hai temporarily stopped his thoughts of studying beer. He glanced at the woman and said somewhat woodenly. This woman looked very tall. Now that she was wearing high heels, she was at least 1.85 meters tall. Even if she was barefoot, she would be close to 1.8 meters. The clothes she was wearing were also very cool, although the temperature outside was almost 0. The most eye-catching thing was her exposed collarbone. It was really beautiful, but the Yuan tribe below the collarbone was much smaller. Her face carried a mixture of charm and purity, but it was not attractive to Jiang Hai. Because the current Jiang Hai was almost drained dry by Prawalton, he was now in sage mode, and would not be invaded by external things. In fact, if Jiang Hai thought about it carefully now, he might remember who this person was. Kendall Jenner was the half-sister of the American socialite, Kim Kardashian. Kim Kardashian was very famous in the United States because of some videotapes that could not be found in China. However, she was famous in China because one of her sisters was married to Lamar Odom, a player who had made great contributions during the Lakers' 2-time championship. Therefore, Kim Kardashian's nickname in China was Big Sister-in-Law, and Kendall Jenner's nickname was Little Sister-in-Law, or Little Sister Jean. However, this nickname was recently snatched away by her more capable sister. But this did not mean that Kendall Jenner's reputation was low, especially in the supermodel industry. She was 20 years old this year, but she was already a delicate supermodel. She was also one of the supermodels in this year's Victoria's Secret fashion show. What do you raise in your manner? Looking at Jiang Hai, Kendall Jenner was still very interested in Jiang Hai. Although her family was not a top family in the United States, and was very rich, they were very well informed. It was impossible for her not to know that Jiang Hai was a young tycoon, who was less than 30 years old, and could earn more than $1 billion a year. Chapter 641. Oh, I just raised some cows and fish, Wang Yao said, looking at the woman in front of him with a delicate face and a hint of seduction. Jiang Hai was obviously not very interested in her. Firstly, it was because of Prawalton, and secondly, it was because Selena Gomez was here. Of course, Jiang Hai himself was not particularly interested in these models. Is that so okay? Listening to Jiang Hai's cold answer, Kendall Jenna, who was opposite him, could not help but feel a little embarrassed. She could see that Jiang Hai did not seem to be interested in her. So she looked at Gigi Hadina, who came with her in the distance, curled her lips, stood up and left. At this time, in the distance, watching Jiang Hai withstand the test, Taylor Swift and the others couldn't help but feel a little dissatisfied. What's wrong with this guy? Kendall is still very good. Could it be that he is not interested in women? Taylor Swift, whose face was very white, but her lips were quite red, couldn't help but frown and say with dissatisfaction, "Okay, our matter. Let's leave it at that for today. I still have my man to accompany." Glancing at Taylor Swift, Selena Gomez couldn't help but frown. This guy, I really hate him more and more. After that, she ignored Taylor Swift and Ally Golding and walked straight to Jiang Hai's side. What should we do now? Looking at Selena Gomez's stubborn look, Ally Golding couldn't help but frown and say with a helpless face. She really didn't want to see Selena Gomez get hurt again. We must think of a way. Taylor Swift's eyes narrowed as she looked at Jiang Hai, who stood up over there. "Oh, you're back. Why does this beer taste so weird?" Ignoring Taylor Swift and Ally Golding, Jiang Hai could not help but grin when he saw Selena Gomez. He pointed at the beer in his hand. "Oh, you're back. Why does this beer taste so weird? This is a beer produced in the Netherlands. It's called Desperado. It's very strong. It's mixed with tequila, so it tastes a little sweet when you drink it. But people who aren't used to it will feel weird when they drink it." Taylor Swift couldn't help but laugh when she heard Jiang Hai's words. Really? Hearing her words, Jiang Hai glanced at the English words printed on the bottle. He was indeed a little confused. "Let's go. I'll take you to meet my friends. They are all beautiful women." Looking at Jiang Hai's appearance, Selena Gomez couldn't help laughing. Jiang Hai can be so cute sometimes. She patted Jiang Hai on the shoulder and took Jiang Hai to the people who were playing in the distance. Seeing Selena Gomez coming, these people also looked at her and Jiang Hai beside her. In the modeling circle, news is actually quite fast. They may not know who Jiang Hai is, but they have heard of this name. It's just that when Jiang Hai came, they didn't want to show too much, but now that Jiang Hai came, they also looked at him with a smile. Tomorrow, there will be a total of 42 models. 15 of them will be angels and 27 supermodels. However, many of them will not be here. For example, your compatriots, she and he. However, there are still quite a number of them. This is Sister Audrey Lima. She is from Brazil. Looking at the eyes of these women, Selena Gomez didn't seem to notice at all and began to introduce. The first to be introduced was a Brazilian named Audrey Lima. This woman was actually very famous in the modeling circle. In 2013, she had an annual income of $6 million and was the third most expensive model in the world. Why was she the first to be introduced? Because tomorrow's Victoria's Secret was almost her home ground. Born in 1981, she was the model who had signed with Victoria's Secret for the longest time. She also had the most experience here. At 1.78 meters tall, she didn't look like the South Americans that Jiang Hai knew of. Her figure was very tall, her skin was slightly bronze, but it wasn't very heavy. She also had a pair of slender legs that were rarely seen in South Americans. She also had a head of dark brown hair, which made her look really beautiful. After hearing Selena Gomez's introduction, she was the first to stand up and shake hands with Jiang Hai with a smile. But when she shook hands, she secretly used a little strength, which made Jiang Hai feel a little uncomfortable. He was not a casual person, so Jiang Hai quickly pulled his hand back and smiled politely at her. This is Alexander Ambrosio, also a Brazilian. After introducing Lima, Selena Gomez introduced a woman next to Lima. However, this woman was much more reserved. She only shook hands with Lima. After all, this woman was married. Well, Audrey Lima was also married, but she got divorced last year. This woman had divorced a rich businessman. So it could be said that Alexander Ambrosio was not short of money and had no interest in Jiang Hai. He only shook her hand gently, smiled, and then let go. He didn't do anything else. This is Bahati Prinsloo. This is Candace Swanepoel. This is Trooper Aldrich. This is Elsa Hosk, this is Martha Hunter. Under Selena Gomez's guidance, Jiang Hai introduced them one by one. These women could be said to be good-looking. Maybe it was because the aesthetic standards of the East and the West were somewhat different. In Jiang Hai's eyes, they weren't stunning at all, but their figures were really good. Moreover, they were also very willing to show off their figures. At this time, although it was ice and snow outside, these women were wearing relatively cool clothes in this box. They did not mind. The men in the room swept their eyes over them. Selena Gomez knew that although Jiang Hai was not a pervert, his immunity to beautiful women was not very high. But tonight, Jiang Hai was a rare gentleman. He did not look at anyone, and the smile on his face was very calm. This made Selena Gomez very satisfied. After introducing a circle of people, Jiang Hai went to continue drinking, and Selena Gomez did not leave Jiang Hai's side again. It was not until 11 o'clock in the evening that everyone dismissed the party in the name of tomorrow's show. Jiang Hai also left with Selena Gomez. Of course, when leaving, Selena Gomez was still wearing Jiang Hai's very old-fashioned jacket. However, even if this jacket was old-fashioned, Selena Gomez did not care because it was given to her by Jiang Hai. After leaving the nightclub, Jiang Hai also took the car. This nightclub had a full-time driver to send Jiang Hai and the others to the place they wanted to go. Originally, Jiang Hai wanted to open a hotel to stay, but he did not expect Selena Gomez to directly ask the driver to drive to her home. After parking the car, Jiang Hai was also pulled into her villa by Selena Gomez. As soon as the door was closed, she directly pressed Jiang Hai against the door. Looking at Selena Gomez's face getting closer and closer, Jiang Hai also knew what she meant at this time. Holding her pretty face, Jiang Hai kissed the red lips in front of him. After a long kiss, Jiang Hai and Selena Gomez slowly separated. Looking at Jiang Hai in front of her, Selena Gomez could not help but smile. Your performance tonight is really good. It's not like the Jiang Hai I know. Seeing so many white upper body and legs, don't you feel anything? Looking at Jiang Hai, Selena Gomez said in Jiang Hai's ear, There is, but aren't you by my side? I know that as long as I can endure it, you will definitely reward me. Hearing Selena Gomez's words, Jiang Hai also smiled, and then whispered to her. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Selena Gomez could not help but smile, then pulled Jiang Hai's clothes and walked into the next room. This night, there was no need to say too much. Although Jiang Hai was still in the semi-sage mode, he was more or less a young man. Without providing spiritual energy to Selena Gomez, it was not a problem for him to deal with her. After being busy until about 2 o'clock in the middle of the night, the two fell asleep in each other's arms. They slept until dawn, and didn't wake up until noon the next day. Then they went to have breakfast and lunch together. And then Selena Gomez went to the venue this time. Jiang Hai casually strolled around New York before going to the venue. Unlike those stars who walked the red carpet, Jiang Hai entered the venue early. Selena Gomez knew that Jiang Hai was not the kind of person who liked to be in the limelight. Although his seat was very close, he was not a star. After sitting here, he saw an unfamiliar star coming in. Sitting next to him was a black man. Jiang Hai did not know what his name was. After seeing Jiang Hai, he smiled and greeted him. Jiang Hai also greeted him, and then there was no sound. They just sat there quietly and waited to watch the show. Tonight, Taylor Swift also came. As a 5-time Grammy Award winner, Taylor Swift was obviously the focus of everyone no matter where she was. After signing her name outside, she also walked into the venue and went to her seat. However, from the corner of her eye, she happened to see Jiang Hai sitting in the distance, so her but that had not yet sat down lifted up again. Then she walked to Jiang Hai's side and looked at the black man next to Jiang Hai. Hey Jay-Z, where's your wife? Your wife isn't here. So it's not very good for you to be here looking at this thing. Looking at the man beside Jiang Hai, Taylor Swift said with a playful face. Seeing her coming over, the man felt that something was wrong. When he heard her words, he couldn't help but look at her with an embarrassed face, then helplessly looked at her. I said that I asked for leave to watch it. I don't know if you would believe me or not. The black man shrugged and said with some uncertainty, You can think whatever you want, But now I need us to change our seats. My seat is over there. With a chuckle, Taylor Swift said to Jay-Z with a smile on her face. Hearing her words, Jay-Z couldn't help but sigh. It's not good to be targeted by this guy. Although she doesn't know who the man next to her is, she still has to pray for herself. After Jay-Z took Taylor's invitation, she gave her own, then went to her seat and sat down. As for Taylor Swift, she sat next to Jung Hai. But Jung Hai didn't react because he didn't know her. He only knew that she was Selena Gomez's friend. But the people sitting on the other side of her, and the people behind her couldn't help but be excited. Hey, you still remember me? Sitting down and looking at Jung Hai sitting next to her, Taylor Swift said softly. Oh, I remember. You are Selena's friend. But you don't seem to get along very well. Hearing her words, Jung Hai nodded and said. When she heard what Jung Hai said, Taylor Swift couldn't help but pout. This guy is really touching the pot that doesn't boil. Listen, I know about you and Prawalton, you scum. I won't let you be with Selena. Seeing Jung Hai ignoring her so calmly, Taylor Swift couldn't help but say with some annoyance. This guy is too annoying. Oh really? Well then you have to work harder. Originally, Jung Hai was still wondering why this woman seemed to have a grudge against him. Now that he thought about it, it might be because of Selena Gomez. However, if she wanted to stop Selena Gomez from being with him, then let her try. But then again, the relationship between Jung Hai and Selena Gomez didn't seem to be what she thought. Hearing Jung Hai's powerful counterattack, Taylor Swift couldn't help but glare. But considering that she was a public figure, she didn't say anything too extreme. Instead, she sat down again, but her eyes stared fiercely at Jung Hai. Let's watch the show. The show has started. If you stare at me again, I won't lose a piece of meat. Feeling the hostility around him, Jung Hai touched his nose and smiled, then put his eyes completely on the show in front of him. He didn't come here to be angry. Maybe she heard Jung Hai's words, but it was most likely not because she knew that this show would be recorded and broadcast on TV. So Taylor Swift forcibly suppressed her anger, then sat there and looked at the empty stage. But at this moment suddenly a light flashed, outlining the image of the stage. A blue light flashed on the big screen. Then it turned red, then into sparks and finally, with a flash of golden light, the first model appeared. Chapter 642. As the music started and the lights turned on, a pair of golden wings appeared in Jung Hai's sight. When the model turned around, Jung Hai couldn't help but exclaim, not because the model had a good figure or a beautiful face, but mainly because of the golden armor. It really blinded Jung Hai's eyes. After she finished, the second model appeared. She was wearing normal clothes inside, but she had a pair of golden wings on the outside. The third golden wing opened directly, and the ones behind were basically all golden helmets and golden armors. Not long after, the legendary Huaxia supermodel he also appeared. She had 2 golden bubbles on her shoulders. She was really a nouveau riche. Excuse me, what is this Victoria's Secret cell? Looking at the beautiful women flashing on the stage, and the screams coming from the audience, Jung Hai looked at Taylor Swift, who was also cheering beside him, with some confusion. Do you still need to ask? They sell vests. Hearing Jung Hai's words, Taylor Swift's eyes did not leave the stage, and she casually replied to Jung Hai. Hearing her words, Jung Hai couldn't help but scratch his head. If they sell vests, what the hell is this? Will anyone buy these vests? Each of them is wearing a golden holy garment. To be honest, looking at these golden helmets and golden armors, the first thing that came to Jung Hai's mind was the legendary golden holy Seiya. When the armor was put on, it was indeed very intimidating. At least, it made Jung Hai choke with fright. It made Jung Hai have the illusion that they could tear the sky with a punch and crush the earth with a stomp. What the hell are these? What is a golden holy garment? Hearing Jung Hai's words, Taylor Swift couldn't help but look at him with some doubts. She was born in the United States and didn't know what a golden holy garment was. Japanese animation was quite popular in the United States, but the most popular was Dragon Ball. Except for the Dragon Balls, the others were really a lot worse. If they had to be ranked, then the second category should be the mecha category, Because the United States was established very late, anime was a good choice to cultivate the self-confidence of the human race. Therefore, in order to cultivate the self-confidence of their own people, the comics that the Americans created were all a bit, bullshit. Judging from the lousy nature of Marvel and DC, if there wasn't a cosmic war, it really wouldn't be able to attract these Americans. Just like One Piece, Naruto, and so on, they just fought back and forth on Earth, but they couldn't destroy the dimension. Not to mention the dimension, even Earth hadn't been destroyed before. Indeed, the scale was much smaller. Dragon Balls were different. Although they couldn't destroy a plane, at least planets and the like could easily explode. Therefore, for the Americans, sometimes if you tell them about Dragon Balls, they might know about it. But if you told them about other cartoons, they would be a little confused. For example, the Golden Saints that Jiang Hai was talking about. You should know about Greek mythology. Hearing Taylor Swift's unique voice, Jiang Hai also told her, "I know this." Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Taylor Swift nodded. Although Westerners don't know about Saint Seiya, they still know a lot about Greek mythology. After all, in the Western world, many mythological systems came from Greece. For example, in the famous DC and Marvel, there are gods in both worlds. But because DC took the lead, the gods in DC are the gods in Greek mythology. For example, the famous Flash, his power of lightning was given by Hermes. Marvel is a Norse god, so although the Americans believe in God, they are very clear about the Greek gods. It's good to know this, because although it is the age of science and technology, the struggle between the Greek gods has never disappeared. Looking at Taylor Swift, Jiang Hai said with a serious face. Just like Percy Jackson, Taylor Swift couldn't help but ask curiously when she heard Jiang Hai's words. The Percy Jackson she talked about is a movie series. The male protagonist is one of the Greek triumvirate, the half-human child of Poseidon, the god of the sea. Then with this as the starting point, she began to write a story. She had to admit that the story was not very good, but the box office was not low. Listen to me first, don't interrupt. These Greek gods have been preparing to take over the earth, but they can't be discovered by modern technology, so they need to find some representatives in the human world to get their power. The warriors found by Zeus are called God's warriors. The warriors found by Poseidon are called sea warriors. The warriors found by Hera are called underworld warriors. But among them, the strongest is the warrior found by Athena, the Saint Seiya. Looking at Taylor Swift, Jiang Hai talked nonsense seriously, but listening to Jiang Hai's words, which were obviously deceiving the ghost, Taylor Swift felt somewhat inexplicable. Regardless of what Taylor Swift thought, Jiang Hai continued to watch the show while talking nonsense seriously. Saint Seiya is divided into 3 levels: gold, silver, and bronze. Gold represents the 12 zodiac constellations. Silver represents the 24 zodiac constellations closest to the zodiac constellations, and bronze represents the other constellations. There are a total of 12 gold saints, 24 silver saints, and 52 bronze saints. Correspondingly, there is also their saint robe. But the saint robe is not made of gold, silver, or bronze, but made of divine iron. Now these people are wearing shiny gold, similar to the gold saint robe of the gold saints. Don't lie to me. How do you know these things? You must have made it up to deceive me. This is just a series. This year, there are a total of 6 series to be shown: Psychedelic, Ice Angel, Angel Portrait, Fireworks, Pink, and Exotic Butterfly. What does this have to do with the gold saints you are talking about? Looking at Jiang Hai in front of her, Taylor Swift looked at Jiang Hai in disbelief. She wouldn't believe this guy's nonsense. She probably wouldn't believe it. That's why I said it's just like. As for why I know, if you have checked my background, you should know that I was nothing before last year. I suddenly had such a big manor and so much property. In fact, the main reason is, I am a Saint Seiya. In the end, I am still the lowest level. When I become stronger, my fists will tear the sky and my feet will crush the earth. After listening to Taylor Swift's words, Jiang Hai also began to talk nonsense. In fact, he didn't even remember what he said. Although the appearance of these supermodels was, to be honest, not too exquisite, especially for Asians, Their figures were really incurable. They were all more than 175 meters tall. The places that should be fat were fat, and the places that should be thin were thin. When they walked, some places were constantly trembling. 2 straight long legs, plus a waist without a trace of fat. Jiang Hai was admiring, not having any evil thoughts. As for what he said to Taylor Swift, he didn't care. Even if she told this story, no one would believe it. Impossible, you must be bluffing. After listening to Jiang Hai's words, Taylor Swift was not stupid. She turned her head and looked at Jiang Hai with contempt. His fists could tear the sky and his feet could crush the earth. Why didn't he say that he was Superman? Look, you still don't believe me? Hearing her words, Jiang Hai also looked at her before this series ended, and the next series began. Then he looked left and right and quietly looked at his chair. The chair they were sitting on was not a very good chair. It was similar to the chairs in the cinema, but the quality was better. Some parts were wrapped in iron, especially the joints. Jiang Hai looked at this piece of iron, and happened to find a steel pipe that was not very thick. However, even if it was not very thick, it was still steel after all. It could withstand the force of 500 kilograms. According to the strength of a normal person, 500 kilograms? The impact force of a fist when swinging was almost 500 kilograms. This was said to be professionally trained, a heavyweight boxing champion. However, Jiang Hai's physical fitness was 4 times the limit of a human. Was that a joke? Although Saint Seiya was joking, he was ready to let this girl see his difference, so that she would not think of ways to say bad things about him in front of Selena Gomez every day. Thinking of this, Jiang Hai took the steel pipe and pulled it hard. Only a crisp sound was heard. Taylor Swift saw Jiang Hai pull the steel pipe off. This scared her all of a sudden, because she saw that the steel pipe was not thin. Looking at the way Jiang Hai held the steel pipe, she looked at him with some doubts. Is what he said true? There are some things in this world that science can't explain. Holding the steel pipe in front of Taylor Swift, Jiang Hai shrugged and said to her. Then in front of her, he gently pinched the steel pipe with the thumb and index finger of his right hand. The steel pipe that looked really strong was actually squashed by Jiang Hai. Seeing this scene, Taylor Swift was even more confused in an instant. Originally, in her opinion, Jiang Hai's words were nonsense, but inexplicably, they became more credible. Shoo, I saw that you are Selena Gomez's friend, so I told you. Don't tell anyone else. Looking at her, Jiang Hai wanted to throw the steel pipe away, but after thinking about it, if it was picked up by others, it would be troublesome. He was just scaring Taylor Swift, and didn't really want others to know that he was different from normal people. So after thinking about it, Jiang Hai broke the steel pipe from the middle again. Jiang Hai put the part with his own fingerprints inside his clothes. He didn't throw the rest away, but directly stuffed it into Taylor Swift's hands, even though her face was still covered in Meng 13's mask. Looking at her appearance, Jiang Hai couldn't help but smile. Did she really think that Jiang Hai didn't hear her bad-mouthing him last night? Not long after, Selena Gomez walked to the front of the stage wearing the clothes she wore last night. Jiang Hai looked very eye-catching in the big V clothes and began to sing. At first, it was the dance group that came out, and later, it was the dressed supermodels that came out. He had to admit that Selena Gomez, who claimed to be at least 175 meters tall and wore 10-centimeter high heels, was barely enough to catch Selena Gomez's eye, even though she was much more famous than these supermodels. Even though the soles of her shoes were as thick as Selena Gomez's height was only about 1.6 meters tall, and she was almost out of Selena Gomez's sight. The performance of the show was still very fast, especially in the case of watching it. Jiang Hai initially thought that coming to watch the show would be very boring. But unexpectedly, watching beautiful women change clothes was actually quite interesting. While Jiang Hai was still a little reluctant, the show ended. The ordinary audience left first, and the rich and famous people naturally walked through the special passage. Jiang Hai wasn't a famous person, but he was a rich person, so he was also arranged to walk through the special passage. Just outside the special passage, he saw that Selena Gomez had been waiting for him for a long time. As soon as she saw him coming, she immediately rushed over and gave Jiang Hai a big hug. Was my performance good today? Looking at Jiang Hai, Selena Gomez was like a little friend asking for praise. Good, of course it was good. Although Jiang Hai just saw that Selena Gomez was a little petite among a group of big models, he couldn't say such things now. No matter how low his EQ was, he knew that some things couldn't be said. So when he heard Selena Gomez's question, he gave her 2 thumbs up and said seriously. Hearing what Jiang Hai said, Selena Gomez also laughed. Selena, you and him, forget it, you have to pay attention to your safety. Watching Jiang Hai and Selena Gomez chatting there, Taylor Swift, who came out with Jiang Hai, couldn't help but take a step forward. But just as she said a sentence, she saw Jiang Hai glance at her. Thinking of the half-steel pipe still in her clothes, she temporarily took back her words, and could only say pay attention to your safety. Pay attention to your safety? Oh, that, it seems that we really didn't pay attention to it. Let's go buy a t-shirt later. Hearing Taylor Swift's words, Selena Gomez blinked. She didn't know Taylor Swift's original meaning, and she successfully misunderstood. Between a man and a woman, when doing that, it's also called pay attention to your safety. I don't like that thing. Hearing Selena Gomez's words, Jiang Hai shook his head and expressed his preference. Then I'll go buy medicine. Hearing that Jiang Hai didn't like it, Selena Gomez thought for a moment and said to Jiang Hai, eating that thing is not good for your health. Hey, don't think so much about these things. If you really have it, just give birth to it. It's not like I can't afford to raise it. I like children very much. Looking at Selena Gomez, Jiang Hai said with a smile, who wants to give birth to a child for you? Annoying. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Selena Gomez's bronze skin couldn't help but blush, and then she hit Jiang Hai shyly. However, her hit made Jiang Hai even happier. He hugged her and left with a smile. Taylor Swift looked at the two of them and licked her lips. She wanted to say something, but she didn't know what to say. She really wanted to tell Selena Gomez that the man beside her was definitely not a good person. But considering his threatening action just now, Taylor Swift swallowed the words that were about to come out of her mouth. Her woman's sixth sense and common sense told her that what Jiang Hai just said to her was all nonsense. It was all fake. He was lying to her. But the half-steel pipe in her arm showed that what Jiang Hai said might not be all fake. But who knows how much was fake? Taylor, what are you standing here for? Are you waiting for me? At this moment, Taylor Swift and Selena Gomez's good friend, Ellie Goulding, ran over from behind and patted Taylor Swift with a smile. Phew, Ellie, you scared me to death. By the way, Ellie, do you know Saint Seiya? Looking at Ellie Goulding in front of her, Taylor Swift couldn't help but ask strangely. In her opinion, Ellie might know what the hell this was. At this time, Jiang Hai didn't know that Taylor Swift was scared half to death by him. After he left with Selena Gomez, he went straight back to Selena Gomez's home. There was no need to say much about what he would do when he got home. After eating some simple supper, the two of them did what they needed to do. It was all unspeakable content. The two of them didn't leave home until noon the next day, but this time they were leaving. Selena Gomez was going back to Los Angeles. Don't forget, she was an actress and also a singer. She also had to work. She wasn't ready to spend the rest of her life with Jiang Hai. Since she was leaving, Jiang Hai would follow. He didn't know anyone in New York, so he naturally had to go home. Of course, when he got home, he would inevitably be looked down upon. In order to make himself less awkward, Jiang Hai decided to bring some gifts back when he went back. But it turned out that if he didn't bring gifts, he might just be looked down upon. After bringing gifts, it was actually haha, because his gift, speaking of which, was a little easy for people to misunderstand. Chapter 643. This is the gift you bought for us? I bought it for you guys. I went to the singlet and underwear exhibition this time, so I bought some for you guys to wear. Jiang Hai looked at Bernice's teasing gaze in front of him, and couldn't help but smile awkwardly. But his eyes were somewhat evasive, because now he was regretting it. Originally, he wanted to buy these vests and let the girls wear them when they wore their pajamas at home. But now it seemed a little, changed, right? It's very beautiful, but we don't like to wear underwear. It will restrict our development. It's winter now, and we don't go outside. It's more comfortable to wear this at home. After taking a look at the thing in front of her, Daliana said with a smile. While speaking, she squeezed her already developed upper body, then raised her eyebrows at Jiang Hai. Then you guys, wear it when you go out. Looking at Daliana's appearance, Jiang Hai sighed helplessly. Actually, I quite like these clothes, they look good. Seeing Jiang Hai sighing, Azalina chose a suitable one for her and Seth, then directly took off the t-shirt she was wearing in front of Jiang Hai. In an instant, two things that shouldn't be there appeared in Jiang Hai's sight. And between her legs, Azalina didn't have the habit of wearing underwear, so it was clearly visible at this time. Although it could be seen every day, it was the first time Jiang Hai saw it like this. Maybe it was the second time. Wow, Lena, you're really getting bigger and bigger. Seeing this scene, Jiang Hai almost choked, but Daliana and Marian's eyes lit up. The two girls went directly in front of Azalina and used their hands to touch the two things in front of them. Okay, stop fooling around, you guys will grow up in the future. Let me try these clothes. After slapping away Daliana and Marian's little hands, Azalina rolled her eyes at them, then picked up the clothes and tried them on. I say, if you want to try these clothes, can you go back to the house and try them on? Looking at the bold and unrestrained Azalina, Jiang Hai whispered. Bernice and Littleya were also blushing at this time, but their eyes didn't leave Azalina. They had never worn underwear like this before, so now they were quite curious. Therefore, these women in the house completely ignored Jiang Hai's words and just watched Azalina try on. Azalina changed into a black underwear, and the vest on her upper body was almost see-through, and it also had a squeezing effect. Jiang Hai looked at the vest on her upper body, and it seemed to be about to burst. Under the black vest, some things could be seen very clearly. He had to admit that the designer of this vest was definitely not a good person. After wearing this vest, not only did it not block the things that shouldn't be blocked as Jiang Hai thought, but it also gave off a sense of beauty. On the contrary, it reflected a kind of hazy beauty. Looking at it, Jiang Hai had an impulse to tear the vest apart. As for the lower body, well, Jiang Hai really didn't look at it. When he bought it, he stood at the door of the shop and asked the shop assistant to help him choose. He really didn't know what the shop assistant chose. He only vaguely remembered the sizes of these girls. For example, Daliana and Marian should be B, Bernice should be C, and Littleya should only be A+. After all, she was congenitally deficient in the past. As for Azalina, she should be D. This was also what made Jiang Hai most curious. When he first saw Azalina, she was only B, but after living here for so long, she had grown by 2 sizes. He had to admit that she was really scary. After the shop assistant finished choosing, Jiang Hai didn't look at it carefully and directly paid the money and left. Now he regretted it, because at this time, Azalina chose. Not to mention the upper body, the problem was that there were no pants on the lower body. Instead, it was a high-waisted corset with a few bags hanging below, plus 2 thigh-high stockings. In other words, the key part was that it was endless, and everything could be seen. After putting it on, Azalina deliberately sat on the sofa and raised her legs, perfectly showing her things that shouldn't be shown in front of Jiang Hai. Hey, this is the lower part of the clothes, it's quite convenient. Hearing Azalina's words, Jiang Hai had no choice but to retreat. He rolled and crawled to his room on the 2nd floor. He needed to calm down. This was really too much. After going to New York twice in a row, Jiang Hai was temporarily free, because he really had nothing to do now. In mid-November, it was completely the rhythm of winter. Although it hadn't snowed yet this year, Winthrop was dry and cold. The girls had completely left the house. Only Jiang Hai would walk around every morning, going to the cowshed, the dock, and the stable to take a look. Then he would come back to lie on the balcony on the 2nd floor, play with his mobile phone, read novels, or play games or watch TV. Aphrodite and the others were also completely free, because the winery was already in a semi-closed state. Dulles, Gerard and O'Connor Murphy only needed to watch over there, mainly to guard against mice and the like. The girls had nothing to do at all. After they had nothing to do, except for going back to their villa to sleep at night, they spent the rest of their time at Jiang Hai's place. watching the 5 girls put on their clothes. They, who had already done something that shouldn't have happened with Jiang Hai, were even more free. Sometimes, Aphrodite and the others would even directly go topless, which made Jiang Hai quite depressed. But he still couldn't do anything. Because Bernice was watching from the side, as long as Aphrodite and the others came over, Bernice would follow Jiang Hai from time to time. Jiang Hai didn't know why she was like this, but she clearly didn't want anything to happen between him and these girls. In addition, Jiang Hai was thin-skinned, so it was really not easy to do anything. In this way, the days really went on so painfully and happily. In the blink of an eye, half a month had passed. People were afraid of being shaken. Everything was the same. Time would pass very quickly. Just like now, it was already December. As time went into December, the cold air of the Arctic began to move south. The sky that was originally quite clear in November was no longer clear after entering December. Dark clouds pressed down on the city. Of course, this was just an adjective. But in Boston, the city was really easy to rush because the snow here was too heavy. In fact, since entering November, Boston had snowed a few times, but it wasn't very heavy. After it snowed the next day, the snow was only 2 or 3 centimeters thick. Well, in fact, this snow was not considered heavy in the Northeast or Winthrop. After entering December, the real heavy snow came. And this first heavy snow was very fierce, falling for 2 days and 1 night. Unlike other places in North America, Winthrop was located on the bay side. It rained a lot in summer and snowed a lot in winter. Most importantly, the wind was not small. Although the forest played a big role, it was still wind after all, and it couldn't be completely blocked. The snowflakes kept falling down, and the north wind kept howling. Jiang Hai couldn't help but think of a song. The winter wind carries the snowflakes, blowing my tears down. Jiang Hai was now considered to be in a foreign country, but in his view, he shouldn't be considered to be wandering. It rained for 2 days and 1 night. After staying outside for a night, Jiang Hai's work also started because he had to start shoveling the snow. Every year, when it came to shoveling snow, Jiang Hai would have a headache because his manor was a little too big. There was no trouble at the dock because the sea water would not freeze. There was a layer of warm current under the sea, constantly surging up, so the sea water would not freeze, and the snow would fall into the sea. But there was some trouble in the manor. The snow had to be shoveled down from the roof of the cowshed and the stable. Otherwise it would be easy to snow again, and the cowshed would collapse. At that time, Jiang Hai wouldn't even be able to find a place to cry. In addition, the roads in the manor had to be cleared. The snow could be pushed onto the grassland. The land was not afraid of freezing, and the snow contained a certain amount of nutrients. When spring came next year, the snow would nourish the land and make it more fertile. Just like in China, why was the land in the 3 northeastern provinces the most fertile? First, it was because the land here could only be planted for half a year. Half a year was spent resting under the snow, so the fertility of the land was reduced. Second, it was because of the snow. On the morning of the second day after the snow stopped, Jiang Hai dressed up and walked out of the house early in the morning. After staying at home for 3 days, Jiang Hai shivered when he suddenly came out. He put on his gloves and saw Edward Anderson and Robbins Garcia, who had already started working from a distance. Because the cowshed still needed someone to take care of it, the main work was now done by the fishermen on the dock. Only 2 cowboys came out, Robbins Garcia and Harriman Fells, and Jiang Hai's nominal bodyguard, Knerson Peters. Seeing Jiang Hai coming from a distance, these people also straightened up and smiled at Jiang Hai. "Phew, it's really cold," Jiang Hai said as he walked over, and picked up a shovel casually. Today's weather forecast said that the highest temperature during the day was -12 degrees, which was really a little too cold. This couldn't be helped. After it snowed, the snow would absorb the sunlight and melt, so it would be particularly cold. "Haha, boss. This proves that you haven't left the house for the past few days. We've all gotten used to it." After listening to Jiang Hai's words, Robbins Garcia couldn't help but laugh. They didn't care whether it was snowing outside or not. The cows and horses had to eat. So no matter if it was raining or not, even if it was raining knives, Robbins Garcia and the others had to go to the cowshed. Now that he heard Jiang Hai's words, he couldn't help but laugh. However, this was also an innate problem. Jiang Hai was the boss, and he didn't earn this hard-earned money. "Come on, let's get to work," Jiang Hai said with a smile. He picked up the shovel and shoveled the thick snow in front of him. The snow on the ground was very thick. Even Jiang Hai, who came from Bingcheng, hadn't seen such thick snow in a while. The snow was very clean and sticky. With a shovel, a large piece could be scooped up. Of course, it was useless no matter how big the piece was, because the snow was already knee-deep. After opening the door, Jiang Hai and Xiao Bai rushed out. Unfortunately, Jiang Hai couldn't find their location now. Needless to say, Jiang Hai knew that today was destined to be a very difficult battle. Fortunately, he only cleaned up his manor. Although it was very tiring, Jiang Hai was happy when he thought about the land outside and the town. This snow was enough to keep the residents of Winthrop and Mayor Wallace busy. According to the news, this kind of heavy snow should be considered a snow disaster. However, for the people of Boston, they were already used to such snow disasters. Because Boston would have such heavy snow every year, they already had a way to deal with it, and had a tradition. No matter what the people outside were like, Jiang Hai and the others still had to work hard. However, this snow was indeed too heavy last year. It also snowed here, and it was similar to this. But last year, Jiang Hai only needed to sweep 3 places: the front door and the parking lot, the road leading to the main entrance, the road leading to the pier, and the road leading to the cowshed. Just like that, he was busy for a day. This year he had to sweep an additional road, and that was the river, Jiang Hai's man-made river. Although it was next to the sea, there was a thin layer of ice on the river surface. Of course, Jiang Hai didn't need to sweep the snow on the river surface. The main thing he needed to sweep was the snow on the riverside road. This riverside road was very far away, almost as far as half of the manor. In addition, there was the road to the airport and the airport to sweep. He had to admit that it was indeed a little troublesome when his business was big. After spending an hour sweeping the parking lot, he spent another 2 hours sweeping the road to the entrance. Logically speaking, he should take a break now and sweep the road to the pier in the afternoon. However, looking at the vast expanse of white snow, Jiang Hai couldn't help but feel a little impatient. Chapter 644. There are too many places we have to clean. It's so troublesome. During lunch, because they had worked all morning and exhausted a lot of their physical strength, Jiang Hai provided everyone with high-calorie food at noon. Moreover, the portion was enough, so everyone ate happily. But Jiang Hai was thinking, if the manor's roads were to continue to be swept like this, when would it come to an end? It often snowed in Winthrop, and they really liked it. Moreover, there was no telling when it would snow so heavily. According to Robbins Garcia's words, it would take them about 3 days to clean the manor this time. 3 days to clean the manor? There was no telling when another 3 days would come. Well, they didn't have to do anything else this winter except sweep the snow. There's no other way. We've all been like this. Don't worry, boss. With such heavy snow, it won't last until next winter. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Edward Anderson couldn't help but laugh. They were indeed used to it. No, we can't sweep the snow here for the whole winter. We have to think of a way. Jiang Hai touched his chin. It was better not to leave the initiative to God. He wasn't someone who liked to rely on God for his livelihood. Is there any way to get rid of the snow quickly? Looking at the few people in front of him, Jiang Hai thought for a while, and couldn't help but ask them. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Edward Anderson and Robbins Garcia couldn't help but look at each other. There is a way to get rid of the snow, but it will cost money. It's much faster to get a snowplow, but this thing won't be used in summer, so I don't recommend it. After thinking for a while, Robbins Garcia spoke first. Although Robbins Garcia had been with Jiang Hai for a long time, he was still quite used to the style of small manors and pastures. For example, sweeping the snow, or something like that would be done when they were a little tired. There was no need to spend money on machinery, or something like that. Snowplow? That's a good thing. However, after hearing his words, Jiang Hai's eyes lit up. That was a good idea. Can we just drive this thing here? Looking at the snow outside the window, Jiang Hai said excitedly. Why didn't he think of a snowplow? The snowplow can't do anything about the snow outside. It can only sweep the thin snow. Now we have to do it ourselves. But if we buy one, we can drive the snowplow out for a spin every 1 or 2 hours the next time it snows so heavily. That way, we don't have to sweep anymore. However, as soon as his voice fell, Edward Anderson couldn't help but shrug his shoulders. Jiang Hai was too naive. No car could pass through such thick snow, but it could be used in the future. Yes, that's a good idea. After thinking for a while, Jiang Hai nodded. He didn't care about the money for the snowplow, but if he could stop sweeping the snow in the future, this small amount of money was worth it. Boss, if you don't want to sweep the snow, why don't you add a cover to the place where the snow needs to be swept? Just as Jiang Hai decided to get a snowplow in the next few days, Connerson Peters, who had just swallowed a piece of steak, couldn't help but ask curiously. His brain is relatively slow, but he is not stupid. As soon as he said this, everyone quieted down. Did I say something wrong? Seeing everyone quiet down, Connerson Peters couldn't help but ask with some doubts. No, you're right. Why didn't I think of it? Looking at the parking lot outside, and the road over there, Jiang Hai didn't think of adding a cover there. Yes, it's just adding a cover. It doesn't need to be very good. As long as there are some columns made of reinforced concrete, then the cover will be reinforced, and the top will be smooth and sloped. Not only the parking lot, but also the road, so that even in the summer, when it rains, people won't get wet when they walk on the road. Although this was another sum of money, Jiang Hai was lacking in everything but money. Once the shed was built, it would indeed be able to solve the problem once and for all. Of course, this was just an idea. Even if Jiang Hai wanted to build it now, no construction team would be able to start work at this time. It has to be admitted that 3 stooges are better than 1 zhuge liang. After everyone had a meal, they thought of a way to solve the snow. A snowplow and a shed. These 2 have been put on the agenda by Jiang Hai. But now there is no way to buy a snowplow because at this time, not only is the snow in Jiang Hai's manor blocked, but the highway outside is also blocked. At least, when the snow is cleared and the highway outside can be used, Jiang Hai will go to Boston to buy a snowplow. After lunch, Jiang Hai and the others were busy again because they know that they don't have to sweep like this next time. So Jiang Hai and the others are still very energetic. In the afternoon, not only did they clear the road to the cowshed and the dock, but they also cleared the road to the airport. After returning, even if Jiang Hai's physical fitness is 4 times that of ordinary people, he still can't bear it. After dinner, he went directly to the room to sleep. The next morning, they went to the airport to clear the snow. The airport is very important here, because they have to rely on the plane at the airport to patrol every day. No one knows if someone will come to steal the fish. The fish in Jiang Hai's fish farm are very important. They are his private property. In the afternoon, Jiang Hai and the others continued to sweep the road by the river. After sweeping for the whole afternoon, they only swept 2/3 of the road. After another day of rest, on the 3rd day, Jiang Hai and the others used the whole morning to sweep the remaining 1/3 of the road. At this time, the highway outside their door is also cleared. Jiang Hai didn't waste time, and directly took Robbins Garcia to Boston in the afternoon. He is the only one among them who knows more about snowplows. After arriving, it is not too troublesome. After all, it is just a snowplow, and is not very expensive. They easily picked one. In fact, the snowplow is not specially designed. They are a variant of the pickup truck. The front can be equipped with a snowplow and a plowshare. The plowshare is used to push the snow away, and the snowplow is used to clear the snow. The functions are different, and the effect is different. However, this plowshare can only push about 20 centimeters of snow at most. For example, there is almost half a meter of snow in Jiang Hai's manor, so it can't do anything. After all, once it is pushed, the snow will almost enter the engine. This is impossible. In addition, the sides of the car are also equipped with flaps that can be opened to increase the snow removal area. When working, the front of the car is connected to the middle line of the road. This wheel is very important. It can be said to be the most important thing. because it is used to sweep the snow out of the ground and throw it into the lawn. Anyway, Jianghai will install a roof next year no matter what. So it doesn't matter whether this thing is good or bad. Anyway, it will only be used for one winter. After all, it is new, one winter is not a problem. After buying the snowplow, Jianghai is ready to go back. But just as he drove the car to the entrance of the manor, he saw Mayor Wallace's car slowly driving over. Although the snow on the highway is almost cleared, there is still some snow. But after all, there was still some drifting snow. At this time, it was reasonable to drive slower, especially for an old man like Mayor Wallace. Hey Jiang, you bought a big guy? Seeing Mayor Wallace in the distance, Jianghai stopped the car first, ready to see if he is coming to him or going to Boston. Sure enough, the other party is coming to him. As soon as he saw Jianghai, he was already slowing down. Slowly stopping next to Jianghai's car, Mayor Wallace said with shining eyes. Yeah, the snow in the manor is too thick, it is troublesome to sweep it. Looking at Mayor Wallace, Jianghai said with a smile. Can you lend it to the town? Hearing that it was really Jianghai who bought it, Mayor Wallace said with a smile. No, the town made so much money this year. This car is only about $20,000. Don't tell me the town can't afford it. As soon as he heard Mayor Wallace's words, Jianghai curled his lips and calmly refused him. What a joke, this thing is his. Tisk, rich people are really stingy. Hearing Jianghai's words, Mayor Wallace couldn't help but shrug his shoulders and say, my money didn't grow on trees. If the town borrows it, and I use it badly, who am I going to find? Rolling his eyes at Mayor Wallace, Jianghai said impatiently. Jianghai is very clear about the character of the people in the town. If he borrows it, then someone will go to the town to borrow it, and the town is very likely to borrow it. Jianghai is not stingy, in fact he is stingy. Why should the snowplow he bought be used by the town? Besides, if the town is really in trouble, he can donate one. But the problem is that the town is definitely not in trouble this year. Okay, my dear Grandette from the mysterious East. Hearing Jianghai's words, Mayor Wallace knew that Jianghai will not lend the car to him no matter what. This Jianghai is a very stubborn person. If there's something, if there's nothing, I'm going back. Hearing that the old man kept going astray, Jianghai couldn't help but look at him and open the door. If there's something, let's talk inside. After hearing Jianghai's words, Mayor Wallace laughed, stepped on the accelerator, and ran into the door opened by Jianghai. Jianghai also drove the snowplow back to the manor. Of course, when he went back, he also sent a message to Bernice and the others. There are guests coming. If they are still wearing the same clothes, it will be troublesome. Fortunately, Bernice and the others are still very vigilant. When they saw Mayor Wallace's car, they had already changed their clothes. When Jianghai parked the car and walked into the villa with Mayor Wallace, Bernice and the others were all ready. Mayor, you are here. Seeing Mayor Wallace come in, Bernice and the others couldn't help but smile at him. Hey, I came to talk to Jianghai about something. Looking at the scene in front of him, Mayor Wallace also said with a smile, and then sat on the sofa that had been empty for him. Jianghai went to the refrigerator and took 2 bottles of Coke, one for himself and one for the mayor. After taking a sip, Jianghai looked at Mayor Wallace, wanting to see what he came here for. Looking at Jianghai in front of him, Mayor Wallace asked Jianghai with a smile, I won't beat around the bush. Isn't it already December? Jiang, you should also know how important December is for us. Christmas. Taking a sip of Coke, Jianghai looked at Mayor Wallace and asked, Yes, it's Christmas. In the past, when we celebrated Christmas, each family celebrated it by themselves. But this year, the town has some money, so I'm going to hold a Christmas dinner on the last day of Christmas, during the carnival. Looking at Jianghai, Mayor Wallace said with a serious face. Hearing his words, Jianghai nodded. It didn't matter to do some such activities. Such a dinner can deepen the townspeople's sense of honor and unity, which is also beneficial for Jianghai. What do you need me to do? Provide ingredients or pay some money? Looking at Mayor Wallace in front of him, Jianghai is still willing to pay. He is not really stingy. Some money should be spent, he will still spend, especially when it is to earn face for himself. There's no need for money. The town has made a lot of money in the past few months. It's not a problem to pay for this banquet. As for the ingredients, we can't afford the ingredients here. Haha. I came here this time for 2 reasons. First, to get your approval. Second, to get you to make a show. Looking at Jiang Hai, Mayor Wallace said with a smile. But as soon as his words fell, Jiang Hai was stunned. Make a show? Is this a joke? Westerners also watch crosstalks, skits, and so on during the holidays? That's too ridiculous. Looking at Jiang Hai's puzzled eyes, Mayor Wallace also explained to Jiang Hai. Because the organizer is the town, there is no need for the townspeople to pay. The venue, decorations, and so on are all done by us. However, the townspeople also have to show something. This is not money, but a show, singing, dancing, talk show, anything is fine. Jiang Hai, by the way, you have always wanted to integrate into the town. You have to let the townspeople see you, a living you, like ordinary people, telling jokes and embarrassing yourself. If you stay in your manner all the time, you will never really integrate into this town. Looking at Jiang Hai's puzzled eyes, Mayor Wallace also explained to Jiang Hai. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai refused at first. He was not going to perform on stage. It would be too embarrassing. But after hearing Mayor Wallace's words, Jiang Hai couldn't help but frown. He wondered if it was worth it. Chapter 645. That's a deal. I think it's a good idea. Before Jiang Hai could answer, Bernice had already spoken. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai couldn't help but look at her in surprise. Does she understand what I'm talking about? Anyway, Delina and the others have nothing to do at home. Instead of that, they might as well go and rehearse a program. Looking at Jiang Hai's gaze, Bernice walked behind Jiang Hai with a smile, put her hands on Jiang Hai's shoulders, and said with a smile. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai couldn't help but look at Delina and Marian. When he saw that their eyes were 50% puzzled, 30% nervous, and 20% expectant, Jiang Hai also understood that Delina and Marian really wanted to give it a try. That's fine. Anyway, you have nothing to do at home in winter. It's not bad to find something to do. Looking at Delina and Marian in front of him, Jiang Hai said with a smile. Hearing Jiang Hai's decision, the 2 girls glanced at each other and didn't rush to refuse. They really wanted to find something to do. Otherwise, they would have nothing to do except hooking, idling at home all day long. That's a deal. Delina and Marian will perform a program. But what program will you perform? Hearing that Jiang Hai was so happy to perform a program, Mayor Wallace couldn't help but be overjoyed. He then picked up his mobile phone and specially wrote a memo. We don't know yet. After looking at each other, although they wanted to go on the stage to show themselves, the 2 girls hadn't thought about what they would perform yet. So after hesitating for a while, they muttered in a low voice. Oh, it doesn't matter. Take your time to think about it. Don't worry about it. Just tell me a week in advance. You still have half a month. Looking at the 2 girls in front of him, Mayor Wallace couldn't help but say with a smile. What about the others? I'm sure you must have your own thoughts. After seeing Delina and Marian, Mayor Wallace couldn't help but ask with a smile. Don't look at me. I'm here to protect Jiang Hai. As soon as she saw his gaze, Azalina waved her hand and said, I don't know anything. Xiaoya, who was standing beside her, hesitated for a moment before speaking to Mayor Wallace. It's okay, Littleya will sing with me. Hearing what Littleya said, Bernice patted her chest and said, You sing? Hearing her words, Jiang Hai's eyebrows raised. He really didn't know that Bernice could sing? You will be scared to death. I won a singing competition before. Bernice rolled her eyes at Jiang Hai and said proudly, Are you sure? Jiang Hai really hasn't heard Bernice sing. But to be honest, Bernice's voice is not very well pleasant to the ear. Her voice is a little low, not so bright and sharp. Although it is also very pleasant to the ear. According to Jiang Hai's theory, people who speak like this generally don't sing very well. It should be. But she actually said that she won a singing competition before? Yes, I can prove this, it's our communities. Hearing Jiang Hai questioning her sister's words, Xiaoya immediately raised her hand and said with a serious face. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai couldn't help but look at Bernice with some amusement. It's really the talented are bold. TCH, it's better than you not daring to do anything. I'm already singing, what are you doing? Seeing Jiang Hai's gaze, Bernice couldn't help but turn her head and glare at Xiaoya. Xiaoya couldn't help but spit out. She knew that she said something wrong. Then Bernice turned her head and looked at Jiang Hai with a strong voice. Me, I really don't know how to sing. I only know one song. Scratching his head, Jiang Hai has never been a cultural backbone. Since he was young, he would hide if he could. Before he was in high school, the only thing he liked was to play games. After he graduated from high school, the only two things he liked were to play games and play basketball. Singing and so on, his level is very average. Which song? Hearing that Jiang Hai can sing, Bernice couldn't help but be interested. Seeing her so excited, Jiang Hai thought for a moment and said the only lyrics he remembered of the song. Gay friends in the wind and rain. Gay friends in the wind and rain. What the hell? Scratching her head, Bernice looked at Jiang Hai. Could it be that he made it up? Just licking the remains of my gay friend. Welcoming the halo of sleep. Asterisk 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 my gay friend in the wind and rain. Looking at her suspicious eyes, Jiang Hai directly sang. But before he could finish, Bernice directly kicked him. This song is called asterisk 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 my gay friend in the wind and rain? Now that you've kicked me, I really remember that I know a lot of songs. Something like Freeze Shit Hard. And it's so cold, when I was in the Northeast. I played in the mud, the steel pot cried out for repair. The broken pot replaced with a new one. There's also an English song. The left hand that protects the breast. Protect, protect, protect. Looking at Bernice's appearance, Jiang Hai suddenly thought of something. It seems that he really did learn a lot of songs. Get lost. Pinching Jiang Hai, Bernice couldn't help but roll her eyes at him. This guy really learns everything, but he doesn't learn well. What kind of songs are those? It's a mess. Left hand that protects the breast. What is your right hand doing? Hey, I think you sing well. The first song, Freezing the Shit, should be a Russian song. The second song, Playing in the Mud in the Northeast, seems to be English, but the pronunciation is a bit like Indian Three Kingdoms. I don't know the third song, but I know the fourth song Bahamian. But Jiang, you have been here for more than a year, but your pronunciation is still not accurate. It's who let the dogs out, or not protect but woof. Looking at Jiang Hai and Bernice playing there, Mayor Wallace was afraid of hurting his eyes, so he thought for a while and said it. An expert, you can even recognize this? What about this song? You peel a coconut skin, but you give a pear. Hearing that Mayor Wallace recognized what it is, Jiang Hai was also surprised. Then he continued to sing. A magic red suyer? Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Mayor Wallace couldn't help but be a little confused. He didn't understand what it meant. But listening to Jiang Hai's tone, it should be this song. And hearing what Jiang Hai said, Daliana and Marian couldn't help but cover their faces now. Speaking of which, they let Jiang Hai listen to the magic red song. But in the end, their idol was ruined like this. Amazing, but Mayor Wallace, your words are wrong. You should say, your song is so sweet that my teeth are falling out. Then I said, it's your teeth that are not good, uncle. Then you said, you are very creative, learn music from me. Looking at Mayor Wallace, Jiang Hai couldn't stop and kept talking. After listening to Jiang Hai's words, this time Mayor Wallace was completely confused. He looked at Daliana and Marian, as if asking for help, because he really didn't know what Jiang Hai was talking about. What kind of joke is this? Something is wrong. Okay, Mayor Wallace, we will definitely support this matter. As for Jiang Hai, he will also make a program, but it will definitely not be singing. Patting her forehead, Bernice said with some helplessness, Jiang Hai is always up to no good. Oh well, I mainly came here this time to talk about this matter. Since Jiang Hai also agrees, then I will leave. Seeing that Bernice has already helped Jiang Hai to make a decision, Mayor Wallace left with a smile. This time his task has been completed. Not only did he get Jiang Hai to agree to the banquet, but he also confirmed that Jiang Hai will participate, and he also brought back 3 programs. This is a great joy. Since his goal has been achieved, the American didn't have the mood to chat in someone else's home, so he waved his hand and turned away. As soon as he left, Jiang Hai helplessly looked at Bernice, who was beside him. I have no other talents besides singing these songs. Shrugging, Jiang Hai said with some speechlessness. He really doesn't know much, but Bernice ignored him. She turned around and went to study what to sing with Little Ya. She completely ignored Jiang Hai. Hey, you helped me decide, but you didn't help me decide on the program. You are not particular. Looking at Bernice walking away in front of him, Jiang Hai couldn't help but say helplessly. But he also knew that Bernice was reliable. Even a sow could climb a tree. In the end, I have to think about my own program. Leaning on the sofa, Jiang Hai casually turned on the TV and thought about his talents. I don't know if sleeping and eating are talents. If they are, then I actually have quite a lot of talents. In this way, the night was silent. Little Ya and Bernice were studying what songs they were going to sing, while Delina and Marian were studying what performances they were going to perform. After Lu Qing came out, Aphrodite and the others all went back to their own villas, because they had to go back and check. While cleaning, they also had to turn on the floor heating to warm up the room. Otherwise, it would be troublesome if the room was frozen. Besides, they had been living in Jiang Hai's villa recently and didn't have any opportunities. Bernice kept a close eye on them, so there wouldn't be any effect even if they came back. And the most important thing was that now they basically didn't go to the hot spring anymore. Although the hot spring water was still very hot, the exposed areas were too cold. It was good if they hadn't enjoyed the hot spring before. But if they had, then there was no point in it. The tap in the bathroom in their villa was also connected to the hot spring water, so there was no need to go there. Therefore, Jiang Hai decided to sleep alone while thinking about what he should do. In Jiang Hai's view, such a plot was specially designed for the protagonist in the novels he had read before. At this time, the protagonist went up to play a guzheng or a flute, and then the audience would be dumbfounded. Then there would be thunderous cheers, and then there would be love-struck fools who would discover that the protagonist had talents in this area. And then they would marry him or something. The story should unfold like this, but Jiang Hai suddenly realized that he didn't know how to play the flute, nor did he know how to play the guzheng. Even when playing the piano, he only knew how to play the song Dolls and Bears Dance. Obviously, it was impossible to rely on this trick to all the courage, so he studied for half a night, and unexpectedly found that he didn't seem to have any talents. But he was not the only one who thought for half a night. The next morning, except for the heartless, Azalina, who had nothing to do, who woke up normally, the others only woke up yawning when it was almost 10 o'clock. After Jiang Hai had breakfast, he nestled on the sofa again. Today, Robbins Garcia had fed little Xia, so Jiang Hai didn't have to feed it. It was better for him to stay at home, but he was lazy. However, Delina, Marian, Little Ya, and Bernice had already put on their clothes and were about to go out. Seeing these girls, who usually didn't leave the manor once a month, oh no, even a season, and who only went shopping online, actually going out, Jiang Hai couldn't help but be confused. What the hell was this? Where are you going? The road outside hasn't been cleared yet. Seeing that they were about to leave, Jiang Hai couldn't help but ask curiously. We're going to find Sandy. We've studied for a long time, but we haven't chosen a good program. She used to be a teacher, so maybe she has some ideas. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Bernice said to Jiang Hai. Hearing what she said, Jiang Hai's mind also turned. Hey, why didn't I think of that? Wait for me, I'll go too. After that, Jiang Hai jumped up from the sofa. As the saying goes, the onlooker sees the game best. I can't think of any specialties. Maybe it will be effective to ask others? You're going too? Okay, hurry up. Hearing that Jiang Hai was going too, Bernice was stunned for a moment, but she nodded and agreed. This was because she knew about the relationship between Jiang Hai and Xanthi. In fact, she knew Jiang Hai thanks to Xanthi. If she really had something with Jiang Hai, would it be considered stealing her best friend's boyfriend? Well, this is a problem. But there are a lot of things to think about now. After Jiang Hai went upstairs, he changed into his own clothes and went downstairs to get the car. After getting in the car, the women also rubbed their hands. Jiang Hai's battle shield has not been driven for a while. It would be strange if it wasn't cold when it just got on. After all, Jiang Hai just got it out of the ice and snow, After warming the car for a while, Jiang Hai drove away from the manor. On the way to Winthrop, Bernice, who was sitting next to Jiang Hai, kept looking at Jiang Hai who was driving. Should I buy a car too? Otherwise, it's a little inconvenient here. Looking at Jiang Hai's movements, Bernice whispered. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai also noticed this. Logically speaking, in the United States, a car is a very common means of transportation. But in his manor, except for himself, it seems that his women don't have a car. It's a bit too general, but they really don't have a car. Aphrodite and the others don't have a car, nor do Daliana and Marion. In the United States, the driver's license is a compulsory subject for high school graduation. It takes credits. So in the United States, as long as you graduate from high school, you will have a driver's license, but they didn't go to high school. Bernice used to have a car, but because she lived with Jiang Hai for a long time, her car was not sent over, so she doesn't have a car. Chapter 646. When spring comes, I will buy you a few cars to drive. Delina and Marion are only 15 years old this year, and they will only be 16 next year after the Chinese New Year. It will take another year for them to drive, but they can practice in the manor, so I will buy them for you first. After thinking about it, Jiang Hai's parking lot was empty anyway, so he didn't care. It was indeed inconvenient to buy a few cars for Bernice and Marion. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Bernice's eyes couldn't help but light up, and then she began to think about what kind of car she should buy. But that will have to wait until next spring. There is still a season left. While thinking, Jiang Hai's car also drove into the town. Before coming, Bernice called Shinty Clive in advance. After learning that she was in the town hall, Jiang Hai parked the car directly in the parking lot of the town hall. Then Jiang Hai and others walked into this very old building. This was not the first time Jiang Hai came here. But at this time, it was much quieter than the last time he came here. With the arrival of winter, the number of tourists decreased, and the workload in the town also decreased rapidly. With more tourists, there were more things to do in the town. They had to solve the local disputes and the tourist disputes. They also had to solve the pressure in Boston and Massachusetts, and there were many other things. But with the arrival of winter, the end of the year was approaching. Whether it was the state government or the municipal government, there were fewer things to do. With fewer tourists, the workload in the town was also reduced. Now they basically worked 5 days a week, 3 half-days of work, 2 full days and 3 half-days of rest. When Jiang Hai and others arrived, it was just past 10 o'clock in the morning, and it seemed that the town was really not busy. Everyone gathered in groups of 3 or 5, discussing the banquet, drinking coffee, and eating desserts. It was really comfortable. In the United States, government agencies were actually much more relaxed than private enterprises, because there was no such thing as a secure rice bowl in the United States. All of their government employees were hired and not signed lifetime contracts. None of them were signed for 5 years. Basically, they were signed for 2 years or 1 year. Their salary was not very high. Compared to the private companies, it was indeed a lot worse. Those who earned less naturally had more freedom. It was precisely because of this that civil servants in the United States were very lax. In addition, Mayor Wallace himself was not a romantic person, so no one would care about them here. Here, as long as you finish your work, you can play games or watch the competition, as long as you don't disturb the people who are working. But like now, when no one was working, it was good to get together and chat. When Jiang Hai's group came in, the town staff were stunned for a moment before looking at Jiang Hai with enthusiasm. Hey, Jiang Hai is here. Jiang, how come you have time to come here today? Jiang, I heard that you are going to attend the banquet and perform? Jiang Hai heard their greetings instantly. Hearing everyone's voice, Jiang Hai smiled and answered them one by one. Looking at Jiang Hai, Delina, and the others were also very proud. After all, they were close to Jiang Hai. Sandy. After greeting these enthusiastic people, Jiang Hai walked into the office area and saw SH-20 Clive, who had just come out of the office. SH-20 Clive also heard outside that Jiang Hai had come, so he came out specially. You are early enough. Let's go together. Looking at Jiang Hai and the others, SH-20 Clive had a strange look in her eyes, but she quickly covered it up. She smiled and took the initiative to walk in front of Jiang Hai. SH-20 Clive was originally a primary school teacher, but in the primary school, her reputation was very high. Except for the principal and the teaching director, her reputation was indeed the strongest. All the parents were willing to put their children in her class. Later on, when the town started to develop tourism, Mayor Wallace only seconded her to help. Later on, he found that not only was she good at teaching, but she was also very good at handling the town's political affairs. After chatting with her for a while, he decided to make her an important member of the town. In the United States, there was no clear relationship between towns, cities, states, and the United States. This was the organization of the United States government. Therefore, in the United States, the mayor of a small town, civil servants, and so on had a lot of power. Of course, this referred to the top few people. After feeling that Cindy Clive had great potential, Mayor Wallace was also training her. After the incident with the tourists for a few months, Cindy Clive had shown her ability to everyone. Just last month, when she was not so busy, Mayor Wallace had been training her. She was promoted by Mayor Wallace to be the town clerk. Of course, this position was not the same as the one in China, which had more power than the mayor. The main job of the clerk here was to record the big and small matters and proposals in the town. Of course, she also had another role, which was to monitor. She could record the good and bad sides of the town, and then submit them to the higher-ups. It could be said that this position was definitely in the top 5 in the town. Because of this, she had a separate office. Looking at SH-20 Clive in front of him, Jiang Hai always thought of her at this time last year. Are you done with your work today? At that time, she had been the mistress of the Soaring Dragon Manor. However, at some point in time, she had deviated from the original plan. I don't have much to do now. My main job is to help with the program and process. You know, this banquet is a big event for Mayor Wallace. Apart from the annual Sea God Festival, Winthrop hasn't had a Christmas banquet like this for more than 10 years. Now all the big and small matters in the town have to be pushed back. This banquet is the most important thing. SH-20 Clive smiled when she heard Jiang Hai's words. However, looking at her smile, Jiang Hai felt a sense of alienation. Then let's go. I see a cafe with a good environment across the street. We can go and take a look. Maybe she felt that something was wrong between Jiang Hai and SH-20 Clive. So Bernice immediately interrupted. Then everyone walked out of the town hall with a smile and went to the cafe across the street. After sitting down, Jiang Hai and the others also ordered some drinks and snacks. Jiang Hai did not like to drink coffee. Compared to coffee, he preferred to drink tea. However, there was no tea in the cafe, especially in an American cafe. Therefore, Jiang Hai only ordered a glass of juice. SH-20 Clive and the others ordered a lot of things. After Jiang Hai paid, everyone sat there and talked. Bernice and the others had already explained their intentions on the phone, so SH-20 Clive didn't need to be confused on the spot. After looking at the 5 people in front of her, SH-20 Clive hesitated and said, "Originally, I also wanted to produce a show. My show was supposed to be a small stage play, but there was a shortage of people. When you said that you wanted to come, I thought of the roles for you." Looking at Bernice and the others' eyes, SH-20 Clive thought for a while and said to them, hearing that they were going to act in a stage play, the 4 girls couldn't help but look at each other. However, Jiang Hai's eyebrows twitched. It seems that this project isn't a good one stage play. Isn't that acting under the eyes of others? It's full of shame. The stage play I want to act in is adapted from a cartoon. This cartoon is called Frozen. Do you know it? Looking at the people in front of her, SH-20 Clive asked them. But as soon as she finished asking, she was despised by Bernice. Who hasn't seen this cartoon? Even if you haven't seen this cartoon, you have heard the song. After glancing at SH-20 Clive with contempt, Bernice said with a smile, then sang Riley Dog, it should be translated like this. Yes, it's this song. This is Xiaoye, right? Can you sing this song? I find that your pure white figure is very suitable for the role of Princess Elsa. Hearing Bernice's words, SH-20 Clive didn't care. She smiled and stared at Little Ye. She saw Little Ye at Jiang Hai's place before. Originally, the script she prepared this time was not Frozen, but The Little Mermaid. But when she heard that Bernice and the others wanted to come to her to help with the show, she instantly changed it to Frozen, because Little Ye was really suitable. Me, can I? She had watched Frozen before. Although the female lead was supposed to be her younger sister, Anna, the most outstanding part of the movie was actually Queen Elsa. She was not used to having such an important role as a newcomer. Of course, you can try singing Riley Dog. Staring at Little Ye, Sh20 looked at her encouragingly. She glanced at her sister and Jiang Hai, and under their expectant eyes, Little Ye also began to sing. The first line may be a little out of tune, because she was a little nervous, but she quickly adjusted. Compared with Bernice's voice, Little Ye's voice is indeed more clear and pleasant to the ears. Even the staff in the coffee shop looked over curiously after hearing Little Ye's voice. Jiang Hai and the others were also very surprised. Although it was not to the extent of being shocked, Little Ye's singing is really good. I didn't expect you to be a musical genius. Watching Little Ye finish singing, Jiang Hai was the first to applaud, and said with a smile, "It's perfect. You are the best candidate for Queen Elsa in my heart." Looking at Little Ye, Sh20 also said with approval, "That's great, sister. You are going to be a queen. Then should I play Anna?" After patting Little Ye, Bernice also said excitedly, but she was more concerned about her role. She and Little Ye are sisters, and Little Ye is playing Elsa, so she will play Anna. "No, I will play Anna. Look, my hair doesn't even need to be dyed." But Sh20 smiled and said to her, What the hell is this? Then what should I play?" Hearing Sh20's words, Bernice frowned slightly. "Delina, you will play Iceman Kristoff. This is the main role. Marion, you will play Hans, the prince of another country." But Sh20 ignored her, and continued to talk to Delina and Marion. "What about me? What am I playing? No, there is no main role. You don't want me to play Snowbow, do you?" Out of the 5 people who came, 3 of them already had roles. It was impossible for Bernice to say that she wasn't anxious. She pointed at herself and asked anxiously, "You? There's no role for you. There's no role for you. And there's no role for Jiang Hai. Don't forget, you told Mayor Wallace that there would be 3 programs. I helped you solve one, so you have to solve the remaining 2 yourselves." But hearing what Bernice said, Sh20 suddenly laughed, then winked at Jiang Hai and Bernice. "Well, girls, you have to go with me in the afternoon. We have to find other actors. If the script is finalized, we have to order clothes and rehearse. I don't have much time." After that, without giving Jiang Hai and Bernice a chance, she left with Delina and Marion, as well as Xiaoya, leaving only Jiang Hai and Bernice. How can they do this? Looking at the 3 people disappearing, Bernice couldn't help but look at them angrily. These guys actually left her and Jiang Hai behind. It was really too much. As for Jiang Hai, after being stunned for a moment, he continued to drink his juice. Looking at Jiang Hai, Bernice patted him on the shoulder and said with a headache, "You still have the mood to drink juice? I thought Sh20 was a lifesaver, but now she took my sister away. What show do you think we are playing? If it doesn't work, we can just sing. After thinking about it, if you don't know how to act, then sing. This is also Jiang Hai's survival rule. It doesn't need to be amazing, but at least it's not too moving. This is Jiang Hai's idea. Sing. Sing what? Sing your iron pot." Bernice rolled her eyes at Jiang Hai, and remembered the song Jiang Hai sang last night. "What the hell is that?" "No, I learned another song from Nanua last night." Shaking his head, Jiang Hai said with a serious face. "Nanua? You even know the songs from there?" Looking at the serious Jiang Hai in confusion, Bernice's sixth sense told her that he was going to cheat her, but she still subconsciously asked out of curiosity. But after asking, she regretted it. But it was already too late. "Yeah, it's like this, brace girl. But beauty, sister has such a powerful asterisk. Go to hell." Chapter 647. What should we do? Leaning against his car, Jiang Hai looked at the sky and couldn't help but say helplessly. Just now, He and Bernice were chatting, but the two still had to think about the show. Unlike Jiang Hai's indifference, Bernice still had her own ideas. Since she agreed to go on stage and make a show, she would definitely go on stage. But considering that Shinty Clive didn't take her to play, she needed to think of other ways. According to her idea, it was better to go on stage to sing and dance. So after drinking coffee, she said that she was going to shop in the video store. Jiang Hai really didn't have any ideas about these places, so he originally wanted to go back directly. But Bernice said that it was okay to go back, and that he would pick them up in the evening. Considering that it would take an hour to come and go, Jiang Hai wouldn't be able to rest for a long time when he went back. He didn't plan to go back again. But it was also very boring to accompany Bernice to shop in the video store. What should I do? Make a show? Or do a crosstalk? Leaning against the car, Jiang Hai looked at the sky and muttered in a low voice. Hey, why are you here? Just as Jiang Hai was looking at the clouds floating slowly in the sky, suddenly a surprised voice sounded beside him. He looked back and found that the person who called him was no one else but Delia George. As soon as he saw her, Jiang Hai subconsciously wanted to run away. But he really couldn't run away, because last time, something happened in the bathroom of Hodge Circe's house. And it wasn't a very good thing. At that time, he was also hot-headed and said that he wanted to integrate into American life. But this didn't mean that he could have no bottom line. Originally, if it was just for Kelly Solon, Jiang Hai might not be so passive. But the problem was that Delia had a boyfriend. Although Jiang Hai was not a good person, he was not a bad person either. So when he saw Delia, he felt that he was somewhat sorry for Baveda Jean Durat, because he didn't seem to have any deep hatred with him. So since then, Delia sent him some messages, but Jiang Hai only replied at the beginning, telling her that it was not good for them to be like this, so it was better not to contact him. Delia may have also heard Jiang Hai's words, so she didn't contact Jiang Hai after that. But he didn't expect to meet her here. Come to think of it, Winthrop wasn't that big in total. Hey, why are you here? Since they met, Jiang Hai couldn't just turn around and leave, so he asked her with a smile. I came to town to buy these things. Isn't it going to be Christmas soon? I need to decorate it. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Delia couldn't help but smile and lift the bag in her hand, then said with a smile. Hearing what she said, Jiang Hai also glanced at it. It turned out that she wanted to take some pendants. In the United States, Christmas was a very important event, so if the family had the conditions, a Christmas tree must be made, and it must be a real tree. In the United States, soil erosion was not serious, at least in most places. Their forest vegetation area was extremely high, but they didn't care about some small Christmas trees that weren't very big. If the family had some conditions, they would cut one and go back to decorate it as a Christmas tree. With gifts and colorful lights hanging on it, it looked very festive. As for the type of tree, there was no requirement. Fir, cypress, pine. As long as it was evergreen, and in the shape of a pagoda, it would be fine. The things hanging on it were also strange. Some of them were food, little candy, and so on. But there must be a lot of them. There must be carvings. This was the symbol of the United States. Other than that, there were some small toys. Jiang Hai saw a lot of people selling these in town. Oh yes, Christmas dinner. You are also going to attend it, right? Hearing her words, Jiang Hai immediately asked her. Of course, a few girls from our horse farm also came up with a show together, horse riding dance. It's also from the East. My dad just killed him. When she heard Jiang Hai mention the dinner, Delia also said with a smile. Yes, I saw it the first time I saw old George. If your boyfriend dares to treat you badly, your dad will kill him. Haha. But then again, I also signed up to perform. But I don't know what to perform. Look at me, do I have any advantages? Looking at Delia, Jiang Hai originally walked around in a circle. He was now in a desperate situation, so he asked her if she had any ideas. Your advantages? There are a lot: young, rich, good-looking, and good character. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Delia said. But the more she said, the darker Jiang Hai's head became. What's the use of saying these things? Ahem. Let's say something that can be performed on stage. Do you think it's reliable? Looking at Delia in front of him, Jiang Hai said seriously. Something that can be performed on stage. Your basketball skills. After a little thought, Delia said with a serious face. A basketball skills? Hearing her words, Jiang Hai couldn't help but scratch his head. Now his basketball level is indeed like a fantasy novel. There is a fantasy basketball anime in Japan called Kuroko's Basketball. I heard that there are many gay novels on some websites in China. But those things were all fake. They were all nonsense. But with Jiang Hai's current technology, it was a little bit like that. For example, the three-point shot that covers the whole court. As long as he wants, he can throw the basketball into the basket from any position on the basketball court. For example, the absolute defense inside the three-point line. With his speed, his extreme speed is even faster than the ball. Even if he wants to fight a few people, if he only wants to defend inside the three-point line, then he is an invincible existence. Another example is deterrence. As long as he releases his dragon's might, well, it is actually a sense of spiritual energy that can intimidate the enemy. However, as long as he released his spiritual energy, it was very easy for him to make others fall. He could also dribble the ball over pretentiously and then point at his own defender. You will fall down, and then watch me score. Then, the other party would fall down directly, and he would rush to the basket. Now these abilities that originally only existed in fantasy can be done now. He even tried to dunk from the three-point line when he was at home. This is not a problem at all. Moreover, he can dunk from the three-point line at a 720-degree angle, a windmill dunk at the three-point line, and a switch-hand dunk at the three-point line. Basketball was just a pastime for Jiang Hai last year, but he is not going to touch it this year. If it were not for those 2 basketball experiences, perhaps he would have passed the elite line by now, and he would not have to struggle so bitterly. Other than basketball? Scratching his head, Jiang Hai does not want to play basketball, even if it will intimidate the whole court. Other than basketball, what about kung fu? Listening to Jiang Hai, Delia also frowned because she did not know what to say. Other than knowing that Jiang Hai is good at basketball, she really does not know what other abilities Jiang Hai has. Then, her mind turned, and she could not help but think of a rumor. It is said that in the distant east, people there all know how to practice kung fu. Jiang Hai is also from Huaxia. If he knows how to practice kung fu, perhaps it will be quite eye-catching. Kung fu. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai's brows wrinkled. If it's kung fu, then he seems to know some. In addition to the fighting skills that Belle taught him, in fact, Jiang Hai also knows some kung fu. He mainly watched Bernice fight. Although Jiang Hai did not learn carefully, with his current brain capacity, as long as he wants to remember, it is not an exaggeration to say that he has a photographic memory. In addition, Azalina seems to know some kung fu. When the time comes, she just has to do some routines and so on. This is quite scary. Hey, I really didn't think of this. Thank you very much. This is a good idea. Looking at Delia, Jiang Hai clapped his hands and said resolutely. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Delia also smiled. She really did not think that Jiang Hai knows kung fu. Hi Delia. But just as Delia wanted to say a few more words to Jiang Hai, a person came down from the driver's seat of a parked Chevrolet in the distance and shouted loudly to Delia. Jiang Hai also knew this person. It was Baveda Jindaro. After all, last time, Jiang Hai made him a little cuckolded, so after seeing him, Jiang Hai took the initiative to wave, and then nodded. On this side, Baveda didn't know that he was being cuckolded. He called Delia because he saw Delia and Jiang Hai talking too much. Therefore, he took the initiative to call her Delia. But seeing Jiang Hai being so docile, he couldn't help but stare. Then he also nodded to Jiang Hai, but this action was somewhat stiff. Delia also stuck out her tongue at Jiang Hai. Although something that should not have happened between her and Jiang Hai had already made it very clear that he was not going to continue doing this with her. Since Jiang Hai was unreliable, she had to rely on her boyfriend. So she smiled mischievously at Jiang Hai, turned and ran to the front of the car in the distance. After saying a few words to her boyfriend, she waved to Jiang Hai and went back to decorate her home. After she left, Jiang Hai wanted to go back directly. Now he finally thought of a solution to his performance problem. He really wanted to go back and learn. But just as he got in the car, he remembered that Bernice, Little Ye, Daliana, and Marion were waiting for him to drive them back. So he couldn't help but sigh. They sat until around noon. Then Bernice returned to the car with a bunch of DVDs. According to her, not only did she want to sing, but she also wanted to dance. She wanted to impress everyone. Jiang Hai just shrugged his shoulders and let her be. Then he went to have lunch with her. Daliana and the others ate with SH-20 Clive. They didn't come back until 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Fortunately, the DVDs that Bernice bought were all music videos of singing and dancing. Jiang Hai also accompanied her to watch them for the whole afternoon. So they weren't particularly boring. They were all English songs, but some of the singers were from Europe and America, and some were from Asia. For example, before this, Jiang Hai had always had some prejudice against South Korea. Many of the girl groups there had English specializations. He had to admit that these people really had nothing to do. The money in South Korea wasn't enough for them to earn, and they still wanted to come to America to earn money. However, based on the current situation, there were still a few South Koreans in America who acted in TV dramas and movies. As for singing, it seemed that there was only one Psy Uncle Bird, and he heard that he was about to be unable to make a living. As for the others like Bent Dead Dog, Thighs Era, and so on, they were all defeated. In fact, according to Jiang Hai's words, if they wanted to develop, the only way was to go to Huaxia. Although he didn't want to say it, that was the real place to earn money. As long as they were beautiful and sexy, there would always be people willing to spend money to listen to them sing and watch them act. Even if he didn't want to admit it, the number of fans in China was really not small. Pulling the topic back, the three girls were very excited when Xiaoya and the others returned. This was their first time performing in a stage play. They heard that they had already found other actors to play the roles of snowmen, reindeers, snow giants, and so on. Now that the roles were confirmed, they still had to come over tomorrow to practice their lines and then rehearse. From today onwards, they would be very busy people. After Jiang Hai drove back to his house, he discussed with everyone. Jiang Hai wanted to learn martial arts from Azalina. He was really prepared to go on stage to perform martial arts. However, to his surprise, Azalina only knew how to kill people and not martial arts. Fortunately, at the crucial moment, there was still Bernice. When she heard that Jiang Hai wanted to go on stage to perform, she said that she would teach Jiang Hai the set of martial arts she knew. As for Bernice, she was still picking songs. The three girls wanted to go to town, but they didn't have a driver. In the end, Azalina took the initiative and said that she would protect them and be their driver. With Azalina around, Jiang Hai would be more at ease. The next day, when Jiang Hai came back from feeding Xiao Xia in the morning, there was only one of the 5 girls left in the house. "Come get ready. It's time to start training," Bernice said seriously to Jiang Hai with headphones on and music on. "Anytime." Looking at her, Jiang Hai also smiled. Then, he got into her starting position and looked at her with a smile. "Pretty decent. Then let's start. First move, coiling dragon and tiger distance." Seeing that Jiang Hai had assumed the starting position of her set of boxing moves, and it was exactly the same, Bernice couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. Then she chuckled. It seems that Jiang Hai had secretly learned a lot from her. However, it didn't matter even if he secretly learned. She didn't have any sectarian bias. Now, she wanted to see how much Jiang Hai could learn. Chapter 648. Ding dong, ding dong. Listening to the doorbell, Jiang Hai and Bernice lay on the sofa without moving. After the bell rang 3 times, Bernice kicked Jiang Hai, who was lying on her butt, and signaled him to open the door with her eyes. "Why don't you go?" Seeing her eyes, Jiang Hai picked up a soft French fry, took a bite, and said indifferently, "I'm not wearing a vest, it's a little exposed." Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Bernice said confidently. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai looked up, and sure enough, under the loose t-shirt, something that shouldn't be there appeared in front of his eyes. "Okay." Although unwilling to move, Jiang Hai shook his head helplessly, and then stood up. He walked to the door and glanced at the person outside. It was a delivery man. So he put on his mountain lion coat, and walked out in the wind and snow outside. Seeing someone coming out of the manor, the delivery man who was ringing the doorbell also stopped. After waiting for about a few minutes, Jiang Hai rode a four-wheeled motorcycle to the front door. After opening the door, he smiled at the delivery man. "Mr. Jiang, Merry Christmas, this is your package." Seeing that it was Jiang Hai, the delivery man smiled, and then took the initiative to hand over a small thing. Jiang Hai took the large rectangular box and frowned, because he didn't seem to have ordered anything recently. Looking at the words written on it, it only said that it was a musical instrument, which made Jiang Hai a little confused, but the address was correct, and he didn't know who bought it. "Sorry to trouble you." After receiving the package, Jiang Hai checked it, and made sure that there was no problem. Then he gave the delivery man a tip of $10. After receiving the tip, the delivery man was very happy. Generally, people would give $1 or $2, or at most $5, but Jiang Hai gave $10. He was indeed a rich man. After receiving the tip, the delivery man nodded excitedly, and then drove away in his car. Jiang Hai returned to the villa. Walking into the house, Jiang Hai couldn't help shaking the snow off his body. Although he had only been out for a few minutes, he felt as if he was about to be frozen. Glancing at Bernice, who was still lying on the sofa, Jiang Hai couldn't help but roll his eyes at her. Then he hung his coat on the hanger and walked in with the things. Seeing Jiang Hai coming over, Bernice just squinted at him. "You got the things back, what is it?" Looking at Jiang Hai, Bernice said weakly, "I don't know. What musical instrument is written on it?" Listening to Bernice, Jiang Hai shook his head and said, "Oh, it should be Delina's. I heard that there was a broken musical instrument, so she used her pocket money to buy one. What a good child." Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Bernice couldn't help but laugh. She is a silly child, using her own money to buy a broken instrument. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai rolled his eyes at her, then put the things on the sofa next to him, then patted Bernice's leg, and habitually lay on Bernice's thigh. "What do you know, this is called collective. Besides, it's not like you can't get it back." Bernice rolled her eyes at Jiang Hai. She didn't understand why Jiang Hai was so stingy when he was so rich. She really couldn't figure it out. However, after listening to her words, Jiang Hai naturally didn't agree, but he didn't say much. If he said more, it would make him seem petty. He continued to lie on Bernice's lap, watching the TV in front of him. The TV was showing Mars Rescue. This was a new Hollywood film this year. There was no love or hatred in the film, and it was full of positive energy. After it was released in the United States on October 2nd, it achieved good box office results. It was said that it had also caused a lot of excitement in China. Many of Jiang Hai's friends have seen this movie, and the effect is quite good. Although Jiang Hai hasn't gone to the cinema to watch it, but now it has been taken off the screen. This is a paid channel, and any movie that is taken off the screen can be watched. Of course, it costs money. However, Jiang Hai has the legendary annual membership, and he doesn't need to pay extra to watch these movies. As for the situation between Jiang Hai and Bernice at this time, it is also a little unclear. Today is already December 20th, and there are still about 4 days before Christmas Eve, which is the Christmas holiday. Jiang Hai has actually stayed at home for more than 10 days. It is only him and Bernice. Jiang Hai is practicing Bernice's martial arts. In fact, it is just for show. With Jiang Hai's brain, it only took him 2 days to remember it. And because he is stronger, his fighting is much better than Bernice's. Even the wind from the punches is quite scary, but Jiang Hai knows that the actual combat, cough cough, it is just that. If a woman learns it, it is good for self-defense. But if she really encounters an outlaw, then it is not enough. This was the Chinese martial arts that had been castrated. Some of the very sinister moves had all disappeared. Its only function was to strengthen the body, and not to fight on the battlefield. Jiang Hai had already learned it in 2 days. After Bernice chose a song, she also practiced dancing at first. Later, she felt that it was too troublesome, so she changed it to singing. After the accompaniment, she has nothing to do but xiaoya, Daliana and Marian are busy every day. Because they were going to perform and cooperate, it was impossible for them to only practice a few times. The most important thing was that these three girls were quite excited. For them, being able to show off in front of people was an excellent thing. Jiang Hai didn't need to stop them. So these days only he and Bernice are at home. Originally, the two of them are the kind of people who do not care about trifles. Bernice will stay at home with Jiang Hai every day. Because the two of them are bored, they will snatch food, drink, play, and even the sofa and TV. Later, the two of them will stay on the sofa together. Sometimes, Bernice will lie in Jiang Hai's arms, and sometimes Jiang Hai will lie on her lap. Maybe because they are too familiar with each other, the two of them do not have anything to be embarrassed about. The two of them maintain this posture while watching the movie. Not long after the movie is finished, Bernice also sat up and stretched. She has not moved for more than 2 hours. Oh, I finished watching another movie. What should I do? It's so boring. Looking at Jiang Hai, Bernice bent her leg and said to Jiang Hai with a helpless face. But listening to her words, Jiang Hai is also very helpless because he is also very bored. Yeah, but what should I do? After thinking about it, Jiang Hai looked at the ceiling. He really has nothing fun. Otherwise, let's play Three Kingdoms. Looking at Jiang Hai, Bernice said seriously, 3 kingdoms? Okay. Although he is extremely unconfident about his luck, Jiang Hai thought about it and agreed. Because he is also a little bored. When she heard Jiang Hai say yes, Bernice went upstairs and took out 3 kingdoms. Then she sat in the living room with Jiang Hai and prepared to play. They are playing a one-on-one mode, also called KOF mode. Each person has 5 cards, and each person chooses 3 cards. After the order is arranged, they start to play until one side has no one left and wins the game. Jiang Hai and Bernice are not playing for the first time. When Jiang Hai is shuffling the cards, Bernice is choosing the generals. Little Ye's set of generals is full of generals. Wind, Fire, Mountain, Forest, Special, Big Dipper, Earth Fiend, SR, Divine Generals, etc. Of course, there is no need to use Divine Generals in a one-on-one game. But there are more than 100 cards for generals. After all of them are done, each person is given 5 cards. Jiang Hai picked it up and looked at it, and he couldn't help but frown. How to say it? Heroes are more disgusting. Xu Guanyu, a red card killer, can be said to be the most useless character. Xu Lu Bei can give cards to anyone. If 2 or more cards can recover a bit of health, he can ask people from Xu to help him kill. But in a one-on-one game, what use is it? Give cards to the opponent? Wei Su Chu, when drawing a card, can deal twice the damage this turn. But in a one-on-one game, it is also useless. There is also Huang Gai Taisher Ci. The specific skills are not written down, but they are all very weak in a one-on-one game. Looking at the cards in his hand, Jiang Hai sighed and chose 3 heroes. But when he saw the opponent's first hero, he was depressed. Zhen Ji, one of the bug generals in the 3 kingdoms. She has the ability to draw cards infinitely at the start of the game. And today, Jiang Hai's bad luck seems to have reached a limit. In the first game, the opponent drew 23 cards. And in the original starting hand, there is a Zhuge repeating crossbow. And then, there is no more, and then, after a series of arrows. When her turn was over, Jiang Hai's third person only has 1 drop of health left. Then she drew 8 cards again, game over. In fact, sometimes it is that simple. The first loss, the second time Jiang Hai tried again, he still lost. The third time he still lost. He lost until the 5th time. When Jiang Hai threw the cards in his hand into the deck, Jiang Hai was a little speechless. Ha 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 ha, you stinky hand again. Seeing Jiang Hai lose again and again, Bernice was very happy. Come. Do you think I'm afraid of you? After losing again and again, Jiang Hai was also a little angry and shouted loudly. It's not fun to keep playing like this. Why don't we bet something? Seeing that Jiang Hai was going to continue, Bernice said with a smile. Bet on what? Hearing the word bet, Jiang Hai's consciousness came back a little. He is a very careful person. Generally, he doesn't touch things that have the word bet. Just like in Atlantic City, when he entered the casino, he played very carefully. Let's bet. Head flicking. No, you are too strong. Otherwise, whoever loses will have to take off a piece of clothing. Looking at Jiang Hai, Bernice thought for a moment. Since they are going to play, then let's play more exciting. She doesn't have as much money as Jiang Hai, but it doesn't matter if she loses something else, especially taking off her clothes. Thinking about it makes her a little nervous. Take off my clothes? You can afford to lose, you only have 2 pieces of clothing. Glancing at Bernice opposite him, Jiang Hai said with a smile, don't you only have 3 pieces? Great, let your stinky hand take off a piece. Glancing at Jiang Hai disdainfully, Bernice said with a serious face. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai was also angry. Let's bet, I'm not afraid of losing. After the bet was established, the two shuffled the cards again and started playing. But when the cards were in his hand, Jiang Hai was speechless. Sure enough, this time, Jiang Hai lost the game without even seeing the third person on the other side. Take off, take off, take off! Looking at Jiang Hai, Bernice excitedly cried out. Hearing her cry, Jiang Hai thought for a moment. First, he took off his pants. Fortunately, his clothes were very big. When he took it off, it covered his lower body. Seeing this scene, Bernice couldn't help but give him a thumbs up. But Jiang Hai really did take off one of his clothes. The competition continued. But when the second game started, Jiang Hai began to scratch his head again. His luck didn't seem to improve because of the bet. This time, he lost even more miserably. He didn't even see the second person on the other side of Bernice and lost. This time he took off his clothes. Now, he only had his small flat top left. Looking at Bernice's smug look, Jiang Hai frowned. I have to think of a way, or I'll be stripped naked like this. Looking at the general cards in his hand, Jiang Hai's eyes suddenly lit up. Perhaps this will work. When Jiang Hai's attention was focused, the cards in his hand seemed to slow down a little. He remembered the order of each card very clearly. It was as if the more than 100 general cards were imprinted in his mind. As he continued to cut the cards, he was able to clearly remember the order of the generals. When he felt this, Jiang Hai couldn't help but laugh. After the general cards were handed out, Jiang Hai picked them up and smiled. God of Dual Pound, God of Point Kill Huang Zhong, God of Counter Injury Xiao Qiao, God of Scoundrel Hero Zhao Yun, and Huang Yueying Wooden Ox. Looking at these people, Jiang Hai knew that he would win. On the opposite side, Bernice frowned. Obviously, her cards weren't very good. Let's start. With a happy smile, Jiang Hai picked up the card. It seems that in this game, because the general was good, his luck in the cards was also good. The cards in his hand were not particularly bad. With the general's bravery, Jiang Hai finally used the group of heroes, Zhao Yun, to complete the kill. Yeah, I won. With the first victory in this game, Jiang Hai also cheered loudly. Hey, what are you showing off for? You just won one game, annoying. Bernice shouted when she heard Jiang Hai's words. Then she stood up, and in front of Jiang Hai, she gently bit her lip, and then took off her pants under her clothes. Chapter 649. Hey, I'm just joking. You don't have to really take it off. Seeing Bernice throw her pink-laced underwear aside, Jiang Hai panicked a little. He couldn't help but look at her carefully, and then glanced outside. If little Ye and the others come back at this time, it will be troublesome. I admit defeat. If you lose in the last round, I will also strip you naked, for sure. Looking at Jiang Hai, Bernice's fighting spirit continued to rise. Looking at her appearance, Jiang Hai couldn't help but feel that he was in a dilemma. Again, looking at Jiang Hai's slightly hesitant look, Bernice shouted and the game continued. But unfortunately, Jiang Hai has mastered the method of cheating. How can Bernice win? Sure enough, the second round ended with Bernice's somewhat pale face. Jiang Hai once again finished with a wave of 3 kills. Damn it! After Bernice finished speaking, she was about to take off her shirt. But Jiang Hai waved his hand to stop her. Forget it, let's stop here. You lose. Waving his hand, Jiang Hai said to Bernice. What? I can't afford to lose? But Bernice didn't appreciate it. Instead, after glaring at Jiang Hai, she took off her shirt directly. As soon as her shirt was taken off, Bernice appeared in front of Jiang Hai in an instant. Jiang Hai's eyes couldn't help but stare, but he subconsciously avoided it. Bernice's body, how should he say it? She was really beautiful, making Jiang Hai a little embarrassed. However, since the loser was stripped naked, the game was over. Cough, that's it for today. You should put on your clothes. As he said, Jiang Hai stretched out his hand and wanted to pick up the cards. Since the winner has been decided, Jiang Hai can't say anything. No, let's do it again. Looking at Jiang Hai, Bernice's eyes were red from losing so much. She shouted with a serious face. Cough, forget it. Hearing her voice, Jiang Hai smiled helplessly. What is this? It's clear that I won, okay? No, let's do it again. This time let's bet. Well, if you win, Aphrodite and the others will live in your room in the future, and I won't care what you do. After thinking about it, Bernice said seriously. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai's eyebrows couldn't help but raise. This bet can be established. After all, Jiang Hai also needs. But usually when Aphrodite and the others are here, Jiang Hai have no chance to go further, because Bernice's eyes is. If she doesn't care about him, then it's good news. Then let's do it again. Hearing what Bernice said, Jiang Hai took a deep breath. This time he must win. How is that possible? Of course, when Jiang Hai made up his mind to win, Bernice didn't have any strength left to resist. 10 minutes later, Bernice screamed. She really couldn't believe that she lost so badly. It was another triple kill. And she still hadn't seen who Jiang Hai's second opponent was. You said it. You don't have to care about my business in the future. Looking at Bernice, Jiang Hai said with a smile. For the happiness of his lower body, he has ignored Bernice's exposed parts. But then again, it's not like he hasn't seen these things before. Abominable, 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 let's do it again. Bernice said fiercely as she stopped Jiang Hai from packing up his things. But I don't want to gamble anymore. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai has already gotten what he wanted, and there's no need to play anymore. No, let's do it again. If I win this round, the previous one doesn't count. If I lose, I'll let you do that. Staring at Jiang Hai, Bernice said with a malicious look. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai couldn't help but grin. What the hell is this? I think it's better to forget it. No, I must play. Looking at the tough Bernice in front of him, Jiang Hai sighed. It seems that if he doesn't win this round, she will pester him endlessly. Thinking of this, Jiang Hai nodded. Since she is willing to die, then he is willing to bury her. Of course, Jiang Hai doesn't want to do anything with Bernice. This is not in line with his bottom line. Seeing that Jiang Hai agreed, he was about to shuffle the cards, but Bernice grabbed the cards first. I'll shuffle the cards, you shuffle these. Looking at Jiang Hai, Bernice said with a serious face. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai hesitated for a moment. However, he still shuffled the cards. He doesn't trust his stinky hand, but he can think of a way to get some good cards. Sure enough, after the cards were dealt, Jiang Hai found that 4 of the 5 cards were not suitable for a duel. Bulianshi, Zhang Liao Lu Bei, Kai Wenji, and the only suitable one was Huang Zhong. Fortunately, he still had Huang Zhong. This is because he only needed Huang Zhong to play tricks on the cards. As he drew the cards, he attacked first. In the first round of 6 cards, 2 of them were made out of nothing, and 2 of them were made out of plum. In an instant there were 10 cards. Then, he equipped a crossbow and reduced a horse, and the shameless killing began. Ah! How can this be? After 10 minutes, seeing that Huang Zhong still had 1 drop of blood left, but her 3 generals were all dead, Bernice couldn't help but throw away the cards and roar with a face full of anger. This is fate, ah. Okay, quickly pack up and go to sleep. Listening to her roar, Jiang Hai smiled, and then packed up his things. This time, Bernice didn't stop Jiang Hai from packing up the cards. It seems that she also admitted defeat. But when Jiang Hai put away the cards, he looked up and saw Bernice looking straight at him. What's wrong? Jiang Hai touched his face, and said with a guilty conscience. Did she notice that he cheated? I admit defeat. Looking at Jiang Hai's puzzled eyes, Bernice said with a serious face. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai couldn't help but have a look of confusion on his face. Then, he laughed at himself. This little girl is sometimes too serious. That's a joke. Okay, I'm going to take the things back. Waving his hand, Jiang Hai said with a smile. Then he was ready to stand up and put on his clothes, and take the cards back to Little Ye's room. But before he stood up, Bernice had already pounced on him. In order to prevent Bernice from getting hurt, Jiang Hai didn't use much strength, and was pushed to the ground by Bernice. But in front of Bernice's beautiful face, which was only a few centimeters away from him, Jiang Hai was a little confused. You can't be serious, right? It's not like you don't know my situation. I'll harm you. Looking at Bernice's serious expression, Jiang Hai's eyes were a little evasive, and then he whispered to her. But Bernice didn't give Jiang Hai a chance to say more. She lowered her head and kissed Jiang Hai's lips heavily. Her clumsy movements and excessive force let Jiang Hai know that she was not joking. She was serious, but what should he do if she is serious? I'm not afraid. What are you afraid of? About a few minutes later, maybe she felt that Jiang Hai was motionless like a dead fish. Bernice couldn't help but pat Jiang Hai's chest and said fiercely. Then she bit Jiang Hai's ear. Of course, it was not an exaggeration to say that her bite was sucking. In an instant, Jiang Hai took a breath of cold air. The bottom line, and the thoughts in his heart that he had been adhering to disappeared at this time. Since he was possessed by the Dragon Balls, Jiang Hai's resistance to temptation has really become worse and worse. His mind has been infected by some of the things inside the Dragon Balls. He didn't know whether his change was good or bad, but judging from Bernice's current direction, this was what she wanted to see. Feeling Jiang Hai's eyes getting redder and redder, and his big hands gradually moving, Bernice kissed Jiang Hai's lips again. After a long time their lips parted. Jiang Hai turned around and pressed the naked Bernice under his body again. Go to my room. Seeing that Jiang Hai wanted to go further, Bernice did not refuse, but said to Jiang Hai. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai carried Bernice up to her room on the second floor with the last shred of rationality left in his body. Little Ya, your outfit today is really beautiful. Pushing open the door of the villa, Daliana said to Little Ya with a smile. Yeah, unlike us, we have to play boys. But even if we were to play Princess Elsa, we wouldn't be better than you. You didn't see the way those men looked at you. They were about to swallow you alive, hee. At this time Marian, who followed in, also said with a smile. It was already 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and today's rehearsal had ended half an hour ago. Azalina was now responsible for picking up and dropping off the 3 girls. Because the rehearsal had just ended, they were still wearing their costumes. Daliana was wearing a gray jacket. She was playing the male lead of this stage play. Well, in fact, this play was a women's play, and the male lead was not very outstanding. Marian was playing the prince of the country. He was wearing a set of gorgeous European medieval aristocratic clothes, which really looked like a general attack. As for Xiaoya, who was walking in the middle, her clothes were much more extravagant than theirs. She was wearing a sparkling aqua blue dress. In addition to her special makeup and her originally white hair and face, she really looked like a character from a cartoon that had come alive. She gave off a very fairy-like and ethereal feeling. Not to mention men, even women would feel that she was very beautiful. Didn't Jiang Hai cook today? Hearing the 2 sisters' words, Little Ya was somewhat embarrassed, so she decided to change the topic. But when she looked up, she found that Jiang Hai and Bernice, who were supposed to be here, were not here at this time. Where did Jiang Hai and Bernice go? Daliana looked around and asked curiously. Well, there's a sound on the second floor. And just when the 3 girls were in a daze, Azalina, who had parked the car, walked into the room. As soon as she walked in, she also found that Jiang Hai wasn't there. She listened softly, and heard a sound on the second floor. Hearing her words, the 3 girls looked at each other, and then the group of 4 sneaked to the second floor. As soon as they walked to the second floor, the sound became more obvious. And it seemed that this wasn't the first time they heard this sound. Among the 4 girls, Daliana, Marian, and Little Ya blushed instantly. Then, the group of 4 quietly went to the room where the sound was heard, which was Bernice's room. Looking at the unlocked door, they quietly pushed the door open a gap, and then the scene in front of them caused a huge shock to them. At this moment, the familiar Bernice and Jiang Hai were on the bed in Bernice's room. The 2 of them were hugging each other vertically, Bernice's body was tightly attached to Jiang Hai's body. Her two slender legs were wrapped around Jiang Hai's waist, and her two arms were also wrapped around Jiang Hai's neck. Her lips were connected to Jiang Hai's lips, and her lower body was constantly moving. Meanwhile, Jiang Hai's big hand was also covering Bernice's back, constantly exerting force. And with each impact of Jiang Hai's, Bernice's nose would let out some sounds that they could hear. At this moment, a puddle of blood had not completely solidified on the bedsheet under them, which meant that the two of them had not fought for a long time. At the sight of this scene, Delina, Marian and Xiaoya were all dumbfounded. Azalina reacted first as she covered Delina's and Marian's eyes. Closely after that, she took the two girls upstairs. After that, she came back upstairs and took Xiaoya downstairs. However, the scene just now was still a huge shock to the three girls. Although Daliana and Marian had seen Jiang Hai doing those indescribable things, they didn't expect that he would also do that with Bernice. After all, compared to Bernice, Daliana and Marian were not too familiar with each other. Now that Jiang Hai had already laid his hands on Bernice, would he do the same to them? They didn't know that Jiang Hai was actually a victim, but this didn't prevent them from imagining it. Thinking of this, the girls' faces turned red, especially Littleya. Since Delina and Marian were still in name, Jiang Hai might not make a move. However, Littleya was Bernice's little sister, and they were living together. If that was the case, then it would be dangerous. Seeing the dumbfounded looks of the three girls, Azalina didn't say anything, because she had long regarded herself as Jiang Hai's woman. As long as he ordered her, she could climb onto his bed at any time. She didn't feel any psychological burden about the scene just now. Most importantly, she could tell that all the women in this room were really interested in Jiang Hai. Thinking about it, if he were to capture himself and the three girls, then the number of people around Jiang Hai would be increasing. Chapter 650. Christmas had arrived once again amidst thousands of cheers. This was Jiang Hai's second Christmas in Winthrop. Compared to the first Christmas, this one was much more fun. At least, there were more people. Not only were there more people around him, but there were also more people in the manor. December 24th was Christmas Eve. According to the annual customs, this was also a holiday for all the major regions of the United States. Just like the Spring Festival in China, Christmas was also a holiday, and Christmas and the Spring Festival were connected. Therefore, during this period of time, the children would take at least half a month off, and some working adults would take about a week off. On the 23rd, a lot of people came to Jiang Hai's manor, including Philip Turner's two sons who had come last year. Last year, there were two couples, but this year, there was only one. The elder son still came with his wife, but the younger son had already broken up with his wife. Penelope also came, but she only came on the 23rd to take a look at Burke Dollar, and then left. Unlike Philip's two sons, they would stay here until the new year. On the 23rd, Jiang Hai held a party in his villa in the evening. It was not quite right to call it a party. It was more like an annual meeting. While summarizing this year, he also looked forward to next year. Of course, he would give year-end bonuses. In Jiang Hai's manor, although the fish hadn't been put on the market in large quantities this year, with the promotion of the tourists, he had made a lot of money from the lobsters. In 3 months, not counting the town's income, Jiang Hai had earned a total of $35 million from selling lobsters. Of course, in addition to lobsters, abalones, sea cucumbers, and the like were also included. Jiang Hai kept $1 million of the $35 million, and gave the rest to the fishermen as a reward. Jiang Hai had a total of 5 sailors: Edward Anderson, Tommy Charles, Eleanor Cece, Andrew Christian, and Marlon Rupert. Each of these 5 men received $70,000. Of course, this money had to be paid in taxes, so it was up to them to decide what to do with it. When 7 checks were sent to the 7 men in envelopes, they were so happy that their eyes almost couldn't be seen. This was real money in addition to their salaries. They had barely done anything this year, and they had already earned almost $200,000. This kind of income was unimaginable in the past. The fishermen who had their own boats might not even have such a high income in a year, not to mention that they had to repair their boats, hire sailors, and pay higher taxes. Unlike the fishermen who made a pure profit. Therefore, they were looking forward to how high their income would be when they could start fishing in March next year. In addition to the sailors, Jiang Hai's ranch was the most profitable. Naturally, the cowboys were also the most important. Jiang Hai's year-end bonus was calculated based on the total income. The fisherman only made a little more than $1 million, and he received a round number. But the number on the ranch was a little bit higher. Last year, Jiang Hai sold a total of 12,459 cows, which was recorded in detail. The average price of each cow was $142,550, and the total income was $1,776,304.50. A lot of taxes had to be paid. The federal tax was 38.6%. In the eyes of his countrymen, George Bush was a jerk, but he was very popular in the United States. It was because after he took office, he gave the Americans a 0.5% tax cut. In the United States, taxes were divided into 5 categories, and the lowest category didn't have to be paid. After George W. Bush took office in 2002, different people paid different tax rates. Apart from those who didn't pay, some paid 27%, some paid 30%, and those whose annual income was more than $50,000 and less than $130,000 had to pay 35%. Jiang Hai's income was definitely more than $130,000, so he had to pay the highest tax rate of 38.6%. In addition to the 38.6% federal tax, he also had to pay a 2% Social Security tax. Whether or not he would enjoy Social Security in the United States in the future, he had to pay this money. There was also property tax, housing tax, and car use tax. Of course, these were all small sums. Like last year, the property tax was about $6 million, and the car use tax was a few $100,000. The state tax in Massachusetts was 5%. He didn't have to pay the local tax because there was no local tax. That was to say, in April next year, Jiang Hai would have to pay 45.6% tax on his annual income. According to the figures reported by Moses Adams, the tax rate was about $809.87 million. Including the housing tax, it added up to about $815 million. But he didn't have to pay all of this money, because the Federation encourages the farming of agricultural products. His tax rate was reduced by 3.5%. In addition, there was a 1.2% subsidy from the local government's manor, a 1.5% subsidy from the local government's fishery, a 2% subsidy from the federal government, a 2% subsidy from the federal government, a subsidy for farming, and so on. These things reduced Jiang Hai's tax rate by 8.5%. In other words, Jiang Hai only needed to pay a tax rate of 37.1%, which was more than $658 million. Including the housing and car, it was about $600 million, less than $70 million. Although it was still a lot, it wasn't bad. More than half of this money had to be handed over to the federal government, and about 30% had to be sent back to the local government. The state of Massachusetts accounted for about 20%, Boston for 5%, and Winthrop for 5%. According to Mayor Wallace, Winthrop would probably receive more than $30 million from Jiang Hai's taxes. It wasn't a problem at all to say that Jiang Hai had supported Winthrop. $30 million in tax revenue next year was a great thing. No wonder Mayor Wallace thought so highly of Jiang Hai. Of course, Jiang Hai couldn't give the cowboys a bonus based on the percentage of the fishermen's taxes. But it couldn't be a small amount. Jiang Hai had a total of 5 cowboys: Robbins Garcia, Burke Dollar, Philemon Turner, Harriman Fells, and Bell Lester. These 5 had earned more than $300,000 this year. Today, Jiang Hai gave each of them another $200,000. They had never even heard of an annual income of $500,000, let alone thought about it. Robbins Garcia and the others were very happy. Bell and Harriman were going crazy especially Belle. When he retired from Triangle State and became a cowboy, he was laughed at by many people. Although they didn't dare to laugh at him in front of his face, his reputation in the town wasn't very good. It wasn't until he met Jiang Hai that he knew what a real cowboy was. Seeing their father accept the check for $200,000, Philemon Turner's two sons couldn't help but feel jealous. But unfortunately, there were no other positions in the manor for them to join, and they regretted it. Why didn't they hug Jiang Hai's thigh last year? It was really a failure. In addition to the cowboys and fishermen, Jiang Hai also gave a lot of benefits to the others. For example, although Dulles Gerard and O'Connor Murphy hadn't produced any wine yet, they also worked hard this year. After the wine was produced, they would naturally get a reward. But this year, Jiang Hai also prepared a red envelope for them, a check of $50,000. Although it wasn't much, the two of them were very grateful. Aphrodite and the others naturally wouldn't be less. Each of them received $100,000. This made these girls gather together and start to discuss what to buy. Women all liked to be beautiful, especially when there was someone who liked them. Since that night, something that shouldn't have happened between Jiang Hai and Bernice. Although Jiang Hai was driven out of the room by Bernice in the middle of the night and rushed back to his room to sleep, as she said, she no longer cared about the matters between Jiang Hai and Aphrodite and the others. Aphrodite and the others could freely enter and leave Jiang Hai's villa, and could also stay here at night. But every night, before Jiang Hai returned to his room, Bernice would ask him to go to her room and have a good talk. Aphrodite and the others didn't say anything about this, because they didn't care about it. As for the two little rich women, Little Ye and Bernice, Jiang Hai didn't leave them behind. Their money was theirs and Jiang Hai gave Jiang Hai. Little Ye was Jiang Hai's head chef, and she had been cooking for so long. Even if she didn't take credit, she still worked hard. Bernice is Jiang Hai's doctor here. Usually, if there's any headache or fever, they would come to her for treatment. So Jiang Hai gave each of them a check. After all, the relationship between the three of them was a little ahem. So Jiang Hai gave each of them $1 million. Bernice and Little Ye didn't stand on ceremony. Since Jiang Hai gave it to them, they accepted it. Azalina and Knerson Peters were Jiang Hai's bodyguards, so they naturally wouldn't be left behind. Azalina received $1 million in addition to her salary as a year-end bonus, and Conrad also received $1 million. But Conrad was a little confused after receiving the money, because he didn't know what to do with it. In the past, his money was controlled by his managers who were his buddies. He was only responsible for boxing. He came here to find Jiang Hai to repay his kindness. Now that Jiang Hai gave him money, he really didn't know what to do with it. Usually, Jiang Hai would prepare food and clothes for him, and Jiang Hai would also prepare everything for him. Whether it was for sports or when he went out, all the daily necessities were very complete. So even if he had money, he didn't know what to do with it. The only ones in the villa who didn't receive any money were Delina and Marion. Although they were already 15 years old, they would be 16 years old in a few days, they didn't help Zhang Tai at all. Of course, even if they didn't have money, they had a lot of gifts. After happily splitting the money, the festive atmosphere in Jiang Hai's group became even more intense. They had a good gathering on the 23rd. On the 24th, early in the morning, Jiang Hai and the others went to the forest and cut down a few small trees to make Christmas trees. After going back, they decorated the trees. With the help of natural energy, the trees in the forest grew very fast. The faster they grew, the faster they produced seeds. And the faster they produced seeds, the faster the forest covered. Jiang Hai also deliberately went to the forest when he was cutting down trees, but he only saw the mountain lion's family. Jiang Hai didn't see the water gloom or the crocodile. They might be hibernating. Jiang Hai was very clear that snakes hibernated. But did crocodiles hibernate as well? Well, let's just say that it hibernated as well. Anyway, he didn't see it. Although it was winter, the mountain lion's family had a good time. There were countless turkeys, pheasants, and hares in the forest. They were the only large predators, so they had plenty of food to eat. There was no need to worry about that. After spending the whole day decorating the Christmas tree, The 24th Christmas Eve arrived. Jiang Hai didn't say much about the origin of the 3 days of Christmas. After all, he already explained last year that Jiang Hai wasn't a religious person. In fact, no one in his villa was a religious person. Therefore, on Christmas Eve, they didn't go to Mass or anything like that. They just ate and drank together, and Christmas Eve passed. That night, Aphrodite and the others also stayed in Jiang Hai's villa. 8 people squeezed into the villa at once. The total number of people was in the blink of an eye. The next day was Christmas. When Jiang Hai walked under the Christmas tree in the morning, he found that it was full of gifts. This was also a Christmas custom for Europeans and Americans. They would give each other gifts. Jiang Hai naturally gave everyone a gift. And he also received a gift from everyone in his room. Delina gave him a pair of gloves, which she made herself. Although it was a bit rough, it was a kind gesture. Marion gave him a scarf, and Bernice gave him a leather hat. It was like the leather hat of Baldy Valiant in the domestic animation. It was very popular in the Northeast many years ago. Well, the specific time was probably during the period when the Heavenly King ruled over the Earth Tiger. Basically, everyone gave these small things because, to be honest, no one was short of money. It was unnecessary to give some precious things. Among the gifts, the most valuable one was Azalina's gift. She gave Jiang Hai an August magazine. However, it wasn't the 5-round magazine that Jiang Hai bought, but a 30-round magazine. One must know that it was impossible to buy a 30-round magazine in the US. In the black market, a 30-round magazine was much more expensive than a gun. Jiang Hai had a lot of money, but he didn't buy it. Regarding this gift, Jiang Hai was quite fond of it. He immediately went upstairs to grab a gun, and went outside to shoot a bullet. Then everyone started to get busy, preparing for tonight's Christmas dinner. It was very important, just like the reunion dinner during Chinese New Year. Naturally, Jiang Hai's head chef, Xiaoya, became today's head chef. Regarding this point, no one felt that there was anything wrong with it. However, while she was cooking, Xiaoya kept glancing at Jiang Hai. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.